One of the most important discussions when talking archery gear and elk hunting is about your hunting setup, your arrow speed, energy, shot location, and penetration. And lately, that has led a lot of people down the road to heavy arrows. Just what is a heavy arrow? What are the pros and cons, your setups, and even some of the misinformation that's out there? Does it even matter with good shot placement? Is there a kind of a basic heavy arrow formula? Joining the ElkBros crew tonight is our special guest, Mr. Troy Fowler, otherwise known as the Ranch Fairy. Troy brings a special expertise and tons of insight to those questions and much, much more. It's that time of year to talk some gear, y'all. So my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy the show. And as always, for those blue collar hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas, the host of your show, coming to you from Spring, Texas. And that's right, we've got the leader of the Venezuelan Mafia in the house tonight from Katy, Texas, Mr. Luis Gonzalez. And hiding out somewhere right here in the great state, the Lone Star State of Texas, is in witness protection. Brother R.C. Knox is in the house. We got the legend with us. And from Cimarron, we've got our elk hunting coaches with us. That's right. We've got the ninja, Leroy Chavez, and WWJGD. What would Joe Gillia do? He's in the house and joining us at Elk Camp today. Let's give a warm ElkBros welcome to tonight's special guest. As a ranch everything man here in Texas, Troy Fowler has combined his love for hunting, a ranch full of hogs, and a mindset that does not accept failure into the perfect testing environment. Tonight, we welcome the Ranch Fairy himself, Mr. Troy Fowler, into Elk Camp.
Howdy, everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Finally, man. Hi, Brother Troy.
How you doing, man?
So I understand I've entered a room full of Texas deer feeders and one guy from New Mexico.
Yeah.
Rat everybody out on that.
Actually tonight there's three guys from New Mexico in here.
We're outnumbered, brother.
And then the feeder chasers are here as well.
We had to bring you in to kind of even the odds here.
Yeah, right.
Okay, good. Ask Joe. He's still trying to find one of them pigs.
Worse than ever, so that's
right. Hey, bud, welcome to our elk camp, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm glad you have me, or at least we're going to find out.
Well, you know, there's times that I kind of try not to bring guests in before we start recording, and this was one of those times because, like I told you, man, as soon as I put out an email that you were coming, I got an immediate email coming back, man. And Luis was like, Ranch Fairy.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Yeah, thank
for
you.
Sure.
Oh, I'm a big fan, Mr. Troy.
All of us are big fans, and you know, we're all passionate archery hunters, man. That, you know, like any passionate gun hunter, they build hand loads for a reason. You know, it makes everything better. You know, makes you more accurate. You done what you want to do at range. You know, whether you're looking for a bullet that's penetrating or expending all its energy in the animal. I relate this to something like that, hand loading rifle bullets, you know. But
you've been paying attention.
Absolutely.
Good. Most people don't pay attention.
I convinced them, Troy.
Look, brother, I'm going to tell you, there is nobody that believed it more in the setup than I have, right?
Yeah, says the guy, I just like to get something off the shelf and shoot it. And then he went through the process and he's like, oh my God. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, it's eye-opening, definitely. But, you know, in what we learned was I wasn't far off the process anyway. right? In what we learned. And that's why the setup was so dadgum gnarly, you know. We were killing lots.
So what was
animals.
the thing that, so obviously this room's full of people who didn't start shooting a bow last week. What's the thing that jumped off the page tell me what was, you know, you before, and then what's different now? Is it accuracy? Does the arrow behave? Have you shot stuff with it that works better? What's the thing that you said, that's like a Barnes bullet or whatever?
Yeah, no doubt. I think the penetration thing was what it was all about, right? I've got a setup that really worked well, even penetrated well, but I always looking to get better. You know, you can't, if you're not looking to get better, you're probably getting worse, you know? So yeah, right. in our business and in our group, you know, we can't let Luis outdo any of us. Right. So at the end of the day, you know, not only was there a little pride involved in that, but look, you know, Luis is one of the most meticulous men. And I use that term, gentleman. I use that term loosely, but
he's a binary.
He's one of the most, he's one of the most meticulous guys you'll ever meet. And for me, accuracy is everything, right? Where I put my arrow where I want it, generally great things happen, right? And,
yeah, that's right.
And I'm a pretty decent archer, right, as far as shooting the bow. But at the end of the day, if I can get something that's even better, why not use it? You know, so it's kind of like accepting Jesus in your life. You know, if you ain't got him, you're in a lot of trouble. But if you got him, you know, you got the silver bullet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
So what I'm going to do before we start, because man, we're going to get ready to dive off here when we shouldn't be diving off yet. Because what I want to happen, Troy, is I want you to introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners that have been following us that might not know Troy Fowler and the Ranch Fairy.
Okay, well, I was supposed to be in a little hole hiding from everyone with a tinfoil hat, and no one was ever supposed to listen to a damn thing I said. And in 2014 or 15, I really fell in love with hunting big feral hogs, which are, if you really try to go for the adult boars, it's a completely different game. It's not just shooting pigs that come to the deer. They don't come, they misbehave. They act very sketchy. They're not easy. And then once you get one in front of you, to have the arrow system fail, I was 50% at one time. And that's a deer feeder shot. I know the distance. I can wait till they get in the right position. They're not chasing a cow.
And you still had 50% failure at that time, right?
That's correct. And I just kind of I have guns.
Yeah.
Right. I can just shoot them. I have a 44 Magnum lever gun that's just wonderful for them.
Absolutely.
And
hammer.
So I had nowhere else to go because I had everything on earth. I had all the broadheads, all the arrows and stuff. The only thing I hadn't tried was Dr. Ed Ashby's 12 penetration enhancing factors, and said, well, that guy's killing stuff with a longbow that's gigantic, including 2 rhinoceroses. So I'm going to try that. And so I just jumped off the rabbit hole. My first exploration was just to throw a 100 grain brass insert in the front of my arrows and go all crazy and shoot a 125 grain broadhead. And I started pushing broadheads out the other side of them, as opposed to half an arrow, half-ass penetration. They run off, and one of them, they're either dead in 50 yards or they were forever gone. And then I kept pushing and pushing. I learned to sharpen broadheads. I increased my broadhead quality. I learned about arrow flight. I got my arrows flying bare shaft. And now it's just, I said this to Aaron Snyder. We're trying to take the variables of things that can happen and take it to one thing.
Yeah, mitigate it all. Mm-hmm.
That's you.
That's right. The Indian.
If you screw up the shot or the deer, or the animal moves.
Yeah.
So 2 things. But the system can't fail on impact.
Right.
It can't. And that's where I'm at now. Like, I'm going nail guy hunting in a month. And
you'll get tested there.
Yeah, right. I'm shooting 730 at 25%, and they are flying like absolute flying anvils. I mean, they're beautiful, and single bevel and all that good stuff. So,
that's my claim to fame, brother. I killed a nilgai bull with my bow, and that's I've killed bull elk and other things, but man, shooting a nilgai, I had to set 4 days on a water hole to even get that done. Get it.
Shoot 710 at 22%.
Yeah, right. There you go. That's good stuff. So I'll give you an example of failing, but knowing that I didn't fail. So I've been hunting this one pig this year. He's called Right Turn because his tail went to the right all the time. I was looking at him on camera and saying, that's the pig I'm after. He was a 250-pound, 6.5 foot long critter. He's big and square and bulked up. His legs look like they're about that long.
That's a gigantic pig. People don't understand a wild hog to get to 250 pounds. People say, "Oh, I killed a 400-pounder." No, you didn't.
Well, we 250 pounds. One of the guys on the ranch killed one with a rifle that was 270.
That's gigantic.
And we have a scale, and this pig's that big or right under it. Anyway, I hunted him like 10 times. I finally get a shot. At 17 yards, when I wiggled, he waggled, and I shot 3 inches behind the crease. He stepped forward as I released. The arrow went plumb through him. The broadhead was sharp. The system did not fail. And he showed up at another deer feeder 2 weeks later. He said, "The hell with that deer feeder over there. I get shot over there."
Wow.
I'm not going to play with that crazy son of a bitch. He didn't die. Wow. Okay, so this is the variable thing. All the variables were reduced to between him moving and me not shooting right.
Sure.
Everything else worked.
Yeah.
But we're seeing, I said this at ATA at my speech, it really bothers me now to watch white-tailed deer get hit and not have an arrow go through them.
Especially white-tail.
They're not that big.
They're
not that big. And the same guy who will go white-tailed deer hunting and only get half an arrow in him will come march around with you guys in New Mexico and shoot a 700-pound animal with the same arrow system.
Yeah.
It's insulting.
Well, it is for the animal for sure.
Well, sure, but I guess that's where I went. So when I started just absolutely poleaxing them and blowing now it's just whatever angle. I sound arrogant, but you shoot a single bevel with 700 grains on the pigs and stuff, it kind of doesn't matter. Aim for the heart and rock and roll. You're going to get them.
Yeah,
I've seen it and done it.
It's been reduced to me not doing my job, but the system. The arrows don't fly crazy. They don't group that big with broadheads. They don't wiggle or waggle. They don't redirect on impact. They don't go sideways. They don't do any crazy crap. That pig is a great example. I shot, he stepped 3 inches behind the crease, and he shows up later. He's still ain't dead. We got pictures of him now. So I'm gonna have to call him Lazarus. And I'm gonna have to kill him anyway.
And everything, huh?
I shot below the liver.
Gotcha.
It was real low.
Yeah.
So what we want to do this evening, bud, is it's going to be a great evening because this is an elk podcast. We're going to talk about elk hunting, but
sure. Of course.
I really wanted to hit a lot of things that for the different people who are listening, because you're going to have those guys that we got a traditional guy here. We've got somebody that shoots a light setup. And what I mean by light setup is a lower poundage. You got other people that shoot higher poundage. You have people that, we're going to talk about that possibility of doing that budget heavy arrow like that. We're going to get into that even more as we get down there. But before we head down into the next part of our show here, I want to make sure we bring this up feeding into it, because I've heard talk of the Ashby Foundation, and I'd like for that to be mentioned and get its due as well, so that people can actually look into that themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. We have a website called ashbybowhunting.org. So I was a board member until about a year ago, and I have too much going on with the ranch fair and my real life and kids and stuff. So I backed out of the board. But I'm as crazy as this sounds, I'm a scientific consultant. I have a lab radar and a high-speed camera and all that stuff. So Dr. Ed did a 27-year study, and he studied one thing: what stick will go through everything in the highest percentage chance. That's the simple explanation for the Ashby Foundation. He didn't study bows, but arrows have to fly perfect, right? He didn't talk about bows. He doesn't talk about all the stuff. He studied the stick and the pointy end thing on the end.
Ammunition, yep.
Right, and the first two factors are structural integrity and perfect airflight. Yes. It can't break on impact or go sideways.
So there's 12 factors. There's 12 factors.
There's 12 factors, right. Yeah. But those are the first two that are the most difficult.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? We have forward to center, we have edge bevel, we have angle of attack of the broadhead, and then the big debate, the great thing that people can't get over is the 650 grain bone breaking threshold. So we'll talk about that too.
Yeah. And with regards to the Ashby Foundation, Mr. Troy, what is it doing now and how can people help?
So we are a 501c3 and we are not going to take no money from the industry or any industry sponsors. We are currently just about to start testing with a high-speed camera some of the things Ed has said. So we're going to shoot through brush with a high-speed camera and see what arrows do the best. If you had to do a follow-up shot. Okay, let's say you hit one kind of center mass and it doesn't run far and you can get a 50-yard shot and there's a little brush in the way, send it, right? I mean, you're probably better off sending it.
Yeah. So continued research.
Find out what happens. Right. We're going to research that. We're going to research a lot of aero flight things. And then the first modern compound-based Ashby style study was done this summer. So Rob Nielsen is the president of the foundation. He went to Africa and shot 2 Cape Buffalo. One of his arrows was never recovered. It went out the other side. Well, both of them were pass-throughs, but buried. One of them passed through so fast that even the trackers couldn't find it. And then they took the buffalo and propped it up like Ed did. And it was more of a workflow study. So when we start doing this in volume, we got a couple of places with a bunch of pigs. We're going to trap them and set them up and shoot them with different platforms. But they shot different broadheads into the Cape Buffalo, into the ribs and stuff. And they had a 80-pound bow, a 70-pound bow. And then his wife, Rhonda, shoots 38 pounds at 25 inches. Yeah. And she's killed 6 bull nail guy with that. She thinks deer and pigs are kind of funny. She likes shooting nail guy. And with 750 grain arrows at 20 yards, she was able to 5 times in a row put broadheads all the way to the opposite thoracic wall on the Cape Buffalo. Wow. 5 shots back to back to back.
We'll touch base after the first part of the show. You weren't here when we had the introductions. Gilbert introduces me always as the leader of the Venezuelan mafia.
Yeah, right. Perfect.
There's another Venezuelan in this group who, thankfully, he's not here tonight.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. I go to the sunny places
that's right. That's right.
I'm the leader, man. I'm the leader.
Please don't be deceived. Even though I'm called the leader of the Venezuelan mafia, I'm a good disciple, right? And you can ask Joe. I'm a fast learner. So all I'm asking is, what does a guy like me has to do to become a disciple? In this research of arrow penetrations and arrow investigations and all this cool research going on, right?
Reach out to us when we start to do things. I mean, just reach out to the foundation, say, hey, I'm willing to jump into the game, because we're going to need a 6 to 7 man crew when we start doing this. We're going to have a shooter. We're going to have
I'm passionate about this, man. But we'll talk about it later.
Ed says this all the time. I'm friends with Ed Ashby and go out and see him all the time and stuff. And Ed says this all the time. The problem with testing is you do a test and you got 20 more questions.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's really fun. I mean, it's really fun if you're curious.
That's really what sparked it, right?
It's really what sparked me to do what I'm doing, right? I had a setup working great, and then, got with Luis and, just refining that, getting better.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Of course.
And it's funny to hear you talk about your journey and how you got to where you're at, because it's kind of a similar situation. I started noticing failures on my aero flights before elk hunting, and I freaked out because I didn't know what had changed. And I eventually found out that something had changed on my bow, and I was riding the limit on the weight with my bow. Mm-hmm. And that's what made me dive into. So actually, know a gentleman in a bow shop that Gilbert had introduced me to a while back. And he's like, hey, you got to check out this stuff and this information. So I just kind of went down that rabbit hole, Richard, and it started just doing a lot of tests and just modifying and trying different arrows, different shafts. And And look, I mean, I got all these different broadheads, right? And
you got a golf bag. That's a golf
that's
bag.
right. That's right. So
Everybody likes a golf bag.
Now he's showing off, bro, man. Now he's like,
no, man, I just like it's I hear him talk about his kind of path and how he ended up there is like, man, it's kind of the same way, you know, just understanding that you had a failure.
Size of those broadheads he just pulled out, man?
Yeah, those are normal.
That's normal. That's right.
Unbelievable, man.
That's right.
That gave me the heebie-jeebies just seeing them things, man.
Right, that's why you need to shoot them.
If I was a critter and I saw that, I'd just look at it and die.
Those are adult broadheads.
That's right.
Adult broadheads.
That's right.
Exactly right.
So I think you're going to be able to help us with this next part of the show too, that we get started. And that's why we wanted to do this at the very beginning here.
Joe, you know, before we move on, I know you got some questions from our ElkBros mailbox, and you wanted to talk about them.
Yes, sir. Jim Taylor from Jackson, Mississippi. He says, so glad I found your show. I plan on going on my first archery elk hunt this September in Montana, but I'm still somewhat anxious about the shot placement on such a big animal, especially after you talk about how tough they are. What are the spots you would be looking for in shot placement, and are there shots or shot angles that you wouldn't take?
Mr. Taylor, go to our shot placement podcast and check it out because it is the very best I've ever seen. And
you got to use YouTube to do that, so you can see actually the visualizations and the overlays that. The overlays that Joe built.
You know what episode that one is, Joe?
Not right offhand, man. I don't. I don't remember the number of the placement there, but you know, it's they just
look it up as the show goes. So I'll bring it up when I find it.
But there's going to be go ahead.
Everything dies 1/3 straight up the leg and lower 1/3. Everything dies
for sure, man. For sure.
Right. So
you got to be able to get to the vitals.
One of the things that we profess and the thing that we educate, Troy, on our shooters is because you got the golden triangle. There are a lot of lethal shots on an elk that somebody can take without knowing that person's ability level, their comfort level, their gear that they're shooting, without knowing any of that. We teach that we're going straight up the leg, 3 inches back, depending on angle, quarter, you know, and which type of quarter, but we're looking at that 3-inch back area from that, and we want 2 holes through those lungs. Boom, boom. We do that, and you get 2 holes, that animal is down in seconds. You've popped the balloon. And it's not that taking the shot at that golden triangle is not going to kill that animal, but without, again, knowing your gear, knowing your shot ability, knowing the angles, if we don't get 2 holes, that animal is going to die. But again, the other thing that what we're trying to teach is not necessarily just the 2 holes, but having the blood trail to be able to recover that animal. And if sometimes some of those guys shoot that golden triangle and do not get a pass through, that animal's dying. It could clip that arrow. It could bleed internally. It could make it tough. They could end up shooting one way down too much, one way to the other side, catching a shoulder. So we go, our area that we teach is that's location. So we can get those 2 holes, get a good tracking job like that. Now, with that said, if that person is a Gilbert Ornelas or a Luis Gonzalez, and they're shooting that heavy arrow like that, you know, man, I could see where, again, that lower third that you're talking about, or that golden triangle, is not so much of a problem. But again, we don't teach that because we don't know. There are too many.
You don't know the shooter, and you're very likely to have 80% of your people shoot 450.
Or even mechanical, and that's even worse. You know,
don't do that, Mississippi guy. Don't shoot that piece of crap. Don't shoot. We try
to tell our listeners, man, if you're coming to elk country, I've watched it. I've been on the other end of guys not putting their hands on the bull because of having that impact failure.
And Troy, you said something that it resonates with me because I've lived through it, through the process, right? So once you have an arrow like that you trust its capabilities, it doesn't matter what's in the way of as far as the parts of the body of the animal. If you just go for that vital area, the arrow will get there, right? And I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen it. So as an example, this year's elk, I shot hard quartering towards, and I shot him frontal. And it went on the right-hand side of the chest. It went in and it came out behind the back shoulder. And the arrow still flew through and buried itself halfway into the ground, right? So
yeah, and that's another thing we need to discuss for two holes. Is I'm also a respiratory therapist, and I had a cadaver, and I learned how to keep people alive with holes in their body. So conversely, I also know what happens when you have two holes in your body. And you do not want anything in the holes.
Right.
You want the arrow
to go
through and in the dirt. You do not want, it is a physiologic fact. In emergency medicine, in a penetrating object on an emergency scene, they do not pull the object and put you in the ambulance. They wait till they get where there's this stuff called blood and a surgeon before they pull it. And so,
because you're going to lose a bunch of it when they do.
You really want to shoot through them. And then secondarily, I've seen this, and I saw this. I'm old enough that I shot 600 grain arrows and 21 17s and going 180 feet per second. And we never left arrows in animals when I was a kid. Never. I mean, it happened occasionally, but we expected the arrow to just zip through. And then we were pissed because we lost our $14 arrow back then. That was pretty cheap, but
more than that now.
They won't. Yeah, right. They won't react as much if you shoot through them.
Right. I agree. 100%.
They don't run.
Case in point, this year, my bull shot him at 51, 53 yards, I believe. And I mean, center punched him behind the crease, buried to the fletch, but it did not go all the way through it, and as he started running, that arrow was starting to pinch back out, and now he didn't go but about 70 yards and he piled up. We watched him fall. Good. Yeah, we watched him fall, but again, that was not with a heavy arrow setup, right? Yep. So that was another thing that got me to thinking, well, could I punch through him, at 53 yards with a heavier arrow setup? So those are the things that kind of led me down that path with Luis, and watching him shoot his bull. And
I'll tell you what, I haven't shot an elk yet. I've been to Africa and I've shot a bunch of big stuff. I just haven't shot an elk. So what bothers me when I see video is in the calling situation, elk do not walk backwards.
No, they don't.
They're coming toward you. You're going to get a frontal or a quartering on shot because of the situation. They're coming to fight. They think something's up there. They're not going to walk in sideways. They're sure as hell not going to turn broadside very often.
Well, unless you know what to do with your setup.
Yeah.
Unless you know.
I know that. You can put people in
if you're not hunting solo.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But I see a ton of shots that are quartering in on elk on video.
And
you know what they do? They gut shoot them and hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
they don't aim far enough forward.
They can't. No, you can't do it.
Yeah, they don't understand the angles. And, when you're asking this question, Jim, about what shot angles that we wouldn't take, Luis had an animal quartering at him that he totally understands the angle. He understands his arrow flight. He understands what he's doing, and he trusts in his comfort zone. Would I tell you to shoot that shot? Heck no, I wouldn't, because of just what Troy was talking about. Most people don't know where to shoot that. Try to shoot it behind the shoulder, and you're not going to get any lung. You're going to gut that animal, you really have to take that from between the shoulder to the neck to shoot that shot, but you have to understand where that arrow and what it's going to do. That's like a complete frontal that Troy's talking about. There is a devastating killing shot for somebody that knows what to do with it and is able to send that in the right place through that animal with the right type of arrow. Devastating. Would I tell you to shoot that? Absolutely not. I wouldn't, man. I would tell you to wait for the right opportunity that you're comfortable and you know what your arrow is going to do. And so now you are being effective. You have to stay within you to be effective. So again, like he said, Gilbert said, check out our shot, check out our shot placement and all different angles. Go, purchase our academy, man. I mean, our academy, for the investment you get in that, what you get out of it would cost you hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And at the price it's in right now, man, I fill my truck up for more than what it costs for that academy. Right. Yeah. So,
YouTube video is called Where and When to Shoot an Elk.
Where and when to shoot an elk. Absolutely. Yeah.
So when to shoot elk. Dude, it is awesome. We've literally put elk down in under 20 seconds. I mean, I'm talking dead, feet up, done.
That's what you want.
Absolutely. Watch them
blood
fall,
trailing sucks.
Hear them fall. Yeah, man. I like to watch them fall,
I don't
and
like
hear them fall.
It's the worst. I don't like to do that. I like to just shoot them and go pick them up.
I hunted with Luis here a few weeks back in Oklahoma, and we were hunting some big whitetails, on the Red River. And man, we had this situation where I drew back on this deer and he got unsteady and kind of ran out a little bit and kind of quartered away. And it's another thing for guys that don't understand. It's really where you want the arrow to come out. You need to look
for the exit.
Need to look for that angle. It's so important. So, as when I shot, Luis was like, "Oh my gosh, it looked way back," and I'm like, "No, man, I absolutely smoked that rascal. It came out right behind the shoulder on the other side." I said, when he turned to wheel and run off, I could see it. And then we heard the animal crash, but we didn't know exactly which way he had gone. And that arrow went through him so fast, man. And it was the heavy arrow setup, man. It blew through about the 6th rib back and went and come right out behind the crease, right? And so I knew it was in a good spot. But again, we had something, that skin covered that hole. So you weren't getting a whole bunch of blood because of the angle of that shot. When it came out, it was still high, right? But we got both lungs. The animal only went about 70 yards, and we ended up recovering it because I got a really good bird dog.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to speak about on blood trails is there's too much. I don't know if it's misinformation or it's probably a combination of misinformation and marketing videos. If I owned a broadhead company, you'd want to see blood impact and try to sell broadheads. I get that.
Yeah.
But I was on a podcast with a kid at ATA, and he's trying to get out of the mechanical mindset of having this cut that's theoretically 9 inches wide or whatever, that he's going to get a blood trail. And I said, the next 10 deer you shoot, write down impact, how far to blood. Write it down on a damn piece of paper, because you're going to find out there's no predictability on that. However, if you hit them right and you get aggressive on the shoulder and blow through them, they're going to go less than 100. So any dumbass can figure out they ran that direction. It's not like you shoot and close your eyes and go, I wonder where he went.
Yeah, right? We heard him fall.
And the advantage with the pigs is you just go downwind and kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I found it. So we find a lot of them at night.
You can do that with elk as well, man. You can smell them.
Man,
yeah, right.
Sure.
It's really not. Arrows are very lethal. And people don't give them as much credit as they should, and it's just you just have to get aggressive.
I've seen arrows pass through where bullets didn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the tests we're going to do. We're going to get a sandbag and shoot it with a 500 nitro, and then we're going to shoot it with an arrow.
So we did that test. We used a 44 Magnum, shot it into a 5-gallon bucket of sand. It did not come out the other side of the bucket of sand. I shot 2 arrows. It went through 2 buckets of sand.
Right.
I mean,
you just don't have any hydrostatic shock because they're different killing.
That's right. That's right.
What's the next question?
Well, that's that question. We got something else going on now.
Okay.
Exactly, Joe. You guys know what time it is. It's time for the ElkBros shout-outs. If you're new to our show, this is just a shout-out to a few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week, Joe.
Yes, sir. And guess what, y'all? He's back.
Got to be the old Billy Goat.
Yeah, the old Billy Goat's here, man. So for you guys here, it's a shout-out and tip from Bob Collins, the old Billy Goat himself.
Hey guys, this is the old Billy Goat with another tip for you this week. This week's tip is on gear. Wintertime's a great time to buy your gear. First off, it's on sale. But more importantly, is the fact you get to try your gear out in tougher conditions or the same kind of conditions that you're going to meet on the mountain when you're out elk hunting. That's extremely important, because if there's flaws or defects or the product doesn't live up to your expectations, you've got time to trade in and upgrade it or change it out for something that will work for you guys. And that's your tip from the old Billy Goat. Stay safe.
Hi, Brother Bob.
Bob's back, man. Yeah, it's good to see him. Hey, so Troy, man, you're our guest. Would you like to give a shout out to your hometown, man?
Austin,
Gotta be
Texas.
Austin, brother.
I live in Cedar Park. Yeah.
Cedar Park. Gotcha.
It's I have to say, it's been a great place. I've been there 20 plus years and raised my kids there, and it's good country. I can't complain at all.
Awesome.
So shout out to that.
Chav, you're up.
Okay, this week's top listening city is located on a double curve in the Kentucky River in the central portion of the state. Kentucky's capital city is known for having one of the most beautiful Capitol buildings in the country. The ornate Capitol was built in 1906 at a cost of $1.8 million. It has no parking because when it was built, automobiles were believed to be a fad. The city's name is a derivative of the name Frank's Ford. Frontiersman Stephen Frank was killed in an Indian skirmish on this location in Frankfort, Kentucky.
Frankfort, Kentucky. Oh, man.
Frankfort, Kentucky.
You could build a lot of house in 1906 for $1.8 million.
Golly, no doubt.
No doubt.
That was a lot of cash back then, Joe.
Yeah. You ain't kidding, man.
Joe, this next city is located on Lake Michigan's western shore and is a suburb of Milwaukee, known for its majestic bluffs, stately homes, lush farmlands, and expansive open space. It was originally inhabited by numerous Native American tribes, including the Menominee and the Potawatomi and Saul Indians, before being settled in the 1830s. The name is believed to have come from either the native word McGowan, meaning ladle, or referring to the shape of the river in the area of, or Mekon, meaning feather. This is in Mequon, Wisconsin.
Mequon, Wisconsin. So that's right there on the western shore of Lake Michigan, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been there. It's nice.
You have been there?
I have.
Really?
Yeah, our corporate office. One of our corporate offices is right there.
So
that was a strange.
Did we say the name right? Mequon?
Mequon.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. There we go. Gil, we were wondering if we were going to hit that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Didn't know if it was Mekon or Mequon or.
Well, I don't know for a fact that it's Mequon, but I'm going with it.
All right. Hey,
guys,
good.
if we messed it up,
right.
y'all, guys, if we messed it up, y'all send us something to correct us.
Hey, it's flowing with the group. It's Mequon now.
Exactly.
All right. Next up, known as the richest hill on earth. Our next stop listening city was originally a gold and silver mining camp and boomed in the 19th and 20th century thanks to copper. It became one of the largest producers of copper in the world. Job opportunities brought in immigrants from Asia and Europe. It is now the largest. It now has the largest number of Irish Americans per capita in any city in the United States. If you want to really cool experience, take the underground city tour, which visits the Rookwood Speakeasy and the 1890 City Cellar Jail in none other than Butte, Montana.
Butte, Montana.
Montana in the house. See it from the big sky country.
That's kind of cool, man, that the Speakeasy is that close to the jail.
yeah, exactly.
They made it
Go
real
through
convenient,
the cellar.
huh? So
Keeps the cost down.
Both of them were underground?
Seems like it.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Chavez.
Okay, this top listening city is a suburb and only 20 miles from Little Rock, Arkansas. In 1862, a typhoid epidemic took the lives of about 1,500 Confederate soldiers stationed there. The Camp Nelson Confederate Cemetery, the burial site, is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. In its early days, it served as a refueling station on the Cairo and Fulton Railroad. And nearby is Little Rock Air Force Base, the top employee for the city, and this is in Cabot, Arkansas.
Thank everybody over there in Cabot, man, for listening. Appreciate you guys, man. We're jumping all over. We got Kentucky, Wisconsin, Montana, Arkansas, and last but not least, this city in the greater Cleveland area is located in northern Ohio next to Beaver Creek. This city was originally named Corners before it was changed to its current name. The city is known as the sandstone center of the world, and early settlers of the 1800s used the sandy rock for grist mills and sawmills. Home to 9 sandstone quarries, the largest was the Cleveland Company Quarries, established in 1868. Here's some perspective for you. In 1889, I actually saw this pay book, y'all. A pay book from Herman Beesing showed his weekly pay from working in the quarries to be a whopping $6.63. He was able to that, my friends, is blue collar right there in Amherst, Ohio.
Amherst, Ohio.
Wow, everybody's east.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, one Western person, a bunch of east. Y'all are really reaching out. That's good.
It's really wild because normally Washington and Oregon,
right?
Those states show out, man.
Yeah,
we normally get a pretty peppered audience, to be honest. Nationally,
that's good to hear.
Yeah,
and then internationally, it's pretty interesting too to see the countries that listen, right?
Yeah, we actually have listens in now 87 different countries.
That's pretty cool, man.
So yeah,
that explains the draws. Thanks. Good job, guys.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Way to go, guys. Screw us all.
Brother Troy, don't think I'm not the one that is, kicked our own selves in the butt for sure.
I have 7 or 8 preference points for mule deer, and I was supposed to draw. It's a rifle. It's rifle. One of my friends is a big rifle and mule deer guy, and so we put in. I don't remember where we were going. And 3 weeks before the draw, they said, "Oh shit, everybody's applying," so they bumped the points up right above me. So I'm like, "Come on, man!" My wife's tired of me going out west with a bow and arrow. We're suffering some comments. You have guns. So, I should have been an automatic draw, and it just walked out of there. So
in Colorado or where, brother?
Yeah, in Colorado.
Yeah.
Well, I got news for you, dude. After when COVID first hit, and all of the meat departments went dry, and people had some extra time to look at where they could find meat. It tripled applications, and like that. So yeah.
Well, I think it's also a function of people having time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. I think it's, not to get off on something maybe crazy, but the hiring thing that's going on right now, I think people got to sit still for once and go, what do I do for a job?
Sure.
And go looking, right? And they all was moving around. And I think people got to sit and actually study the draws more and made things a little bit more sporty.
Oh, absolutely.
It'll be fine.
Had some.
We didn't draw last year where we normally used to hunt, and so we decided to go OTC, right, Joe? Colorado.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. Now, I just saw, and we're coming out 2 weeks from today, so this will be old news, but for sure, like in Colorado. They did their meeting online, and it was decided that they were not going to have archers in Colorado wear orange or pink or punish them for people not following proper protocol, man.
I don't know why they just didn't move the muzzleloader season.
Yeah, that's another conversation, but also Unit 80 and 81 did become limited draw units. So,
what do y'all think about the camera stuff going on?
So I just
Utah just banned it, huh?
Yeah, they did.
Utah and Arizona, I think.
Utah, Arizona, and now Utah banned it only from July through, I think it's just
during hunting season, right?
Yeah, the hunting season, and they said that and there's been a big outcry because it's public and private, but yes and no on the private, because they said there's no way they can stop people from using game cams on their property for security reasons.
No, that shouldn't be. Yes, it's America. It's still America, bro.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you even how do you even try to enforce something like that? But
we use them as a management tool here, Joe.
I get that, man. I get that. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be difficult. I think the big question is really on public land. And there's a lot of mixed feelings. I mean, I'm listening and looking at all the comments, and you've got the different people. Now, here's what's critical is, whatever the opinion is on this, as a hunting organization, we in a hunting community, we cannot let things, we can have these conversations, but we should not, and we just are not able to afford it dividing us up. We have to stay united.
Right.
Yeah. So,
together we win, divided we fall.
Right. And I'm hearing some guys saying, look, man, we're putting the hunt back in hunting. I'm hearing some people say, well, this is something I enjoy. It gets me out of the woods and doing stuff like that. I hear people saying that, well, I don't want to be on camera myself when I'm out there hunting on public land, or having all of these cameras along next to water, or all these up in a tree. I associated that when I heard that. It made me think about space trash, how things always end up places like that. But
I'm going to tell you right now, you put a camera in public here, it won't be there when you get back.
Yeah. And that was part of the problem too, though, Bud, is that it wasn't so much a wildlife thing. It was a people thing, right? It was causing a lot of issues between people. And
it was pretty amazing. I was in Arizona in January last year, coos and mule deer hunting, and the cameras it was amazing. I wanted to take a bat and just get some. I mean, there would be 10 freaking cameras on the tree.
Sure. Or they'd put up poles, because there's only so many water holes in so many places. So
if you would sit in water, people would come in and just check the camera. Every 2 hours, somebody's walking in and checking the camera. They can't be good for the critters.
On public land?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Yeah. I would never use it on public land.
Yeah. But yeah, so I have mixed feelings on it. I've never used one. I've never even owned one, but I know some people, again, are passionate about it. I think it's just a shame that we always take things a little too far, so that we do some people lose those passions. And, so that's another conversation. That's another rabbit hole, man.
Yeah, right.
But,
we'll get back on track.
Yeah.
The Ransbury took us off the Ransbury dust.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now, so that our listening audience understands this, is we're going to, they keep hearing us say heavy arrow. We're going to find out what is a heavy arrow. We want to talk about some pros, cons. We want to talk about setups, and even the misinformation out there, because I want to tell you, Troy, is that you've got a varied group here. You have a varied group as far as the type of equipment they use, the amount of years they've been using it. I've been an instinctive shooter my whole life until this last year. I've been taking a journey to show people I can try some things, because somebody bought me a bow. I wasn't real happy with these changes I'm trying to make, and it's been a struggle for me, but I've been making it. And for the first time in my life, I had a dozen arrows that cost an incredible amount that I would have never paid for in my life a couple of years ago.
Don't let him lie to you, man.
Yeah,
he bought arrows in a lot of years.
Yeah, and it made me really have a lot of concerns for people, when we talk about these heavy arrows. And I sent you a thing on that, hope, for us to have that discussion on what these people that don't have these large budgets, how they can meet that need of a heavy arrow. So we're going to get there as well with that.
That's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to have a lot of things here. We're going to play a lot of devil's advocate. We're going to put a lot of things out, and we want to hopefully answer questions that are out there. So you've got the floor with what a heavy arrow is. Let's talk about those and what some pros and cons, if there are any. Let's talk about those.
So most people consider heavy 550 total weight. Okay. I've been accused of being the 800 grain arrow guy. Don't know where the hell that came from. Although I will tell you, shooting 800 grains nothing stops those. I'm the heaviest I've hunted with is 1,035, and the animals don't stop them. They They just go through animals like they're going like 170 feet per second. They just go doom for town. They just go through them like they're not there. It's fun.
So I'm going to ask you this
in today's day and age, 550 is a pretty heavy arrow.
So when you talk about, let's take that 800 grain arrow that you were talking about. Can anybody's poundage on a bow shoot that, or do you have to be at a certain poundage to be able to shoot an arrow that heavy?
No, I had a girl. I got a video just the other day from a girl in Mexico shooting a 30-pound recurve, and she shot a whitetail deer at 10 yards with 710 grains, and the arrow flight's like it just goes. I bet the arrow's going 100 feet per second, buried all the way to the fletchings. I don't see that on TV.
You got to remember too, what we've evolved from is even the Native Americans that were here, they shot cedar shafts with really heavy flint style type broadheads, and they were very heavy. So, I mean, a piece of flint weighs a heck of a lot more than a lot of these broadheads that we
I think the biggest challenge we have in the
bow killing buffalo
right now is everybody wants everything to work all the time. And the biggest everything is distance. Everybody's trying to shoot further.
Right.
When I was talking to Aaron Snyder about this, he said, okay, so if you go elk hunting again, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to shoot 700 probably. I'm going to shoot a 3-inch long single bevel that's hand sharpened on a strop that's terrifying 300 grain broadheads. But I'm going to give up 50 yards.
Easy.
I'm gonna trade
your effective
a hammer at close range that one walks and steps on me and quarters to me, and I can put it on the point of the shoulder and smoke him, rather than trying to launch one and pray to God I get an elk. Because delivering an arrow to an elk and getting an arrow through an elk are two completely different conversations that are intertwined.
Yeah, I think
so. When I go, my nail guy set up, like I just said, 730. I'm shooting the original tough head. It's 3 1/4 inches long by an inch and a quarter wide.
You'll get it.
And I'm going to give up shooting 50 yards.
Right.
But if I get the shot I want, which is 30 on a 600 or 700 pound tank, I'm going to have a pretty good chance.
So when I hear somebody say heavy arrow, when I hear them say that, I think about the arrow shaft being very heavy.
Oh no, that's one thing.
That's the lightest part of it, you know.
Well, but that's what I want people to understand.
Before we go to FOC, I just want to make a quick comment because Troy, some of the stuff that you talk about, and obviously that from Dr. Ashby's reports and 12 factors, is I think he makes a comment on his 12 factors about you shoot the heaviest arrow that you are comfortable with its trajectory, meaning so the paradox, the parable that the arrow makes obviously is going to have a certain drop, right, at a certain distance. So you go and feel comfortable to what distance that is for you, and then pick up the heaviest setup that you want for that arrow. So the way I see it, and this is me interpreting what I've read from you guys, right, is like, okay, there's many factors here, and it's very dependent on several things, right? Obviously, you have to take into consideration your bow, your poundage. I mean, you can't just discard that in order to think of what arrow you're going to be shooting, but also you have to think of the animal that you're going to be shooting and the distance, like you mentioned, that you're comfortable with, right? Because you cannot possibly think that your arrow setup is going to be the same for somebody that shoots a 45-pound bow that is going to be shooting a deer from a tree stand, that somebody that is going to be, expecting to shoot an elk at, with a 60, 70-pound bow or 70-pound bow at 50, 60 yards, right? I mean, so I think the answer is it depends in my books, but obviously, all of these things you'll have to take into consideration. I think if you are able to take into consideration, like you're probably going to talk about the 12 factors into any of those setups, into any of those situations, you can come up with customized setups that work for you, but still have most of these factors apply and give you a successful setup, correct?
Well, the one thing that needs to be clarified on that, and this is often misunderstood, and Ed will tell you this, in scientific testing, what is the optimal arrow may not match his statement over the trajectory thing you just brought up. Okay. So in the study, which is 1,035 recorded shots with 113 data points per shot, and this is before Excel. Okay, this is the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Excel wasn't around. You couldn't Google this thing and put a Google sheet up and make it automated. He did this stuff by hand. We've got the books. There's 3 books that are this thick. We have them of all the data, the original study.
Right.
So the 650 grain threshold or greater, the forward to center arrow above 19%, single bevel, sharp, right? All the 12 factors is the ultimate penetrator outside of you wanting to shoot the heaviest arrow for the trajectory for your
Correct.
hunting situation.
Correct.
They're 2 different things. In the study, that thing did the best.
Right.
Now, if you're going to go lower to get a trajectory you can accept, got it.
Yes.
So that's a common thing that people misunderstand is in the scientific study that arrow worked the best.
Yes. And then the
In
650.
fact, here's a crazy fact about Ed. There's a picture of him with a buffalo with his longbow. And when he was studying forward to center, he got the lightest target shaft he could find on the planet at the time. I think it was 6 grains per inch or something. He ran his forward to center up to 30%, but his arrow mass went down to 655. He was previously shooting like 900. And he shot completely through the biggest buffalo he's ever shot with a lighter, high forward to center.
Right.
Unicorn arrow is what I call it. It's very hard to build. Only the stick bow guys can do it.
Yes.
So the trajectory thing is funny, and I've actually studied this. So if you look at your sights and you're shooting a 450, 70 grain arrow, which is real common, okay, that's a 300 spine arrow, normal insert, 125 grain point, somewhere in there, 425 to 475. If you'll look at your pin gaps and you've got them out to 80, they open up. They open up as you go further out.
Exponentially.
Yeah.
Right. You know, does anybody know why that happens?
You keep running out of energy.
loses speed.
You lose energy.
So it's called aerodynamic drag.
Sure.
It's actually a fact in aerodynamics.
And gravity.
The atmosphere is sucking the juice out of the thing as it flies.
Yeah.
But somewhere around 600, the pin gaps start to stay about the same out to 50, 60 yards. So you're managing the same gap. They'll be a little bit close up, right? But they don't open up. One of my buddies had gigantic gaps out to 80. I mean, it was ridiculous, shooting 388 grains. And
because of the momentum,
what
from
happens,
the mass that you're sending out, right?
Right, the momentum overwhelms the drag of the air.
Right.
And you have a more consistent parabola as opposed to this.
I've seen
everybody thinks heavy arrows do this. They don't.
They don't.
A really light arrow goes like this real fast and then goes like that out at distance. Just look at your pin setup. Just look at your pins. And if you have a single pin, well, you need to look at the tapes. But around 600 is where I first saw this. The parabola is just kind of the same. Yeah. So I don't know that the distance management is a factor if it's a more consistent curve. If the arrow kind of does the same thing over distance, then you're kind of managing the same arch, whereas the glider arrow, and I'm going to study this some more, has more beyond 50 is dropping faster.
Yeah.
It might
it's
be
more drastic.
It might be the same amount of drop because it takes off so damn fast.
Yeah.
More to come on that. I'm studying that with the Rocket Man.
And for additional clarity, the 650 grain is the threshold for heavy bone.
Right, and then above. So 900 is way better than 650. Perfect flight, blah, blah, blah. Broadhead don't break, sharp, etc. It's got to have a lot of factors. But, I mean, when you get over the guys who get serious about this, there's a couple of guys who are not talking and they don't want to be on social media. They don't want anybody knowing they exist. Shooting 750 or 800 grain arrows, and they're shooting elk dead in the shoulder and just breaking their ass.
Yeah.
They are just shooting them right in the golden triangle. And sometimes they hit a little high and it breaks them.
The scapula.
Sure.
They're breaking the scapula and breaking them down like a rifle shot.
Yeah.
But they're not going to tell anybody they're doing it because everybody will tell them they're stupid. So they just keep killing 6-point bulls. One guy killed a 6-point bull in one state one day, and then 6 days later killed another, and they were both shoulder shot. I mean, one of them collapsed.
I did that this year on a whitetail. My other setup that I was shooting would most of the time hit, slow way down, or if not, even not go all the way through both scapulas of the whitetail. Right. And I shot one this year, and it was a lot harder. I couldn't even hardly find the arrow. It went through her so hard and so fast.
Yeah, right.
And it was high too, through both scapulas, So, but it actually anchored her like a rifle would hit her, So it was wild.
So I call it plan B. So I'm not planning for perfect because everything works.
Yeah, man, that's
it really does. I mean, most things work when you hit, like, let's just say right on the crease, broadside, 4 inches from the chest. Most things work.
Yeah.
But deer move, you're not as good as you think you are under stress.
No doubt.
The wind blows. In elk, they go uphill and downhill, crazy stuff like that. You have to manage the angle. You might hit a little high, might hit a little low. And I'm not planning for it to being that good. I would just like to have the highest potential. Once again, I said this earlier.
Absolutely.
Reduce the variables to shot placement failure. You got to shoot one, man. Something stupid happens, or it's bull's chasing the cow, you shoot 50, and right when you shoot, he decides to take off. Okay, we're going to have to live with that. That's never going to stop happening.
Yeah.
So when the arrow hits where it's supposed to and it goes in 7 or 10 inches, you should be sad.
Yeah.
You should be sad.
So what would you say are the cons of the heavy arrow setup?
I honestly, it's going to sound arrogant. I haven't found any. So with the proper broadhead on the front, I really haven't found any. The biggest complaint that everybody wants to talk about is they think the trajectory is bad. Nobody shot the arrows. They haven't tried it.
Or speed. Speed.
I've shot this arrow that Luis built me. I've shot this arrow out to 75, 80 yards, and there's no difference than shooting my other setup. It actually it flies better,
Well, you've got weight in the forward, so that's just an aerodynamic thing. So when you put the weight in the forward, the points pull in the shaft, and they stabilize quicker.
So I'll tell you a con. Just looking at what you showed for a lot of people, what was the cost of that arrow?
For 6 of them, with the broadhead on here. Man, I don't remember, Luis. What? 100?
Yeah, I would say for
$150
for 6 total arrow costs, you're probably around 280
per arrow.
So divide that 280
by 6,
$17 an arrow.
Yeah,
$47 an arrow.
Yeah,
$47 an arrow. Huge cost.
280. How many arrows did you build it?
Bullet.
He built me 6.
6.
He built me 6. It wasn't $280 though.
So those shafts, those are the series polo shafts on Mr. Troy, and then
awesome shaft.
we have him the 100 grain inserts in there, and then I take that back. That cost is not that high because you didn't get the iron wheels. You got the traditional sharpshooter.
Yes.
But you're talking 30 some.
Yeah, so you're between $30 to $45 an arrow. Hold on. How many animals have you killed, and how many arrows have you lost?
But you guys shoot from elevated stands, dude. When you start
not all the time.
From the ground,
all the time.
I got news.
I shot 2 pigs. I shot 2 pigs this weekend. Not
lost
even
one
in a
arrow. So you went 50%. Right?
I didn't lose one arrow. I didn't lose it. I lost an arrow like this. That's the arrow I lost. I didn't lose this one. This is actually the one that killed the hog. So I mean,
I love shooting.
And I'm gonna tell you straight up, bud. I have never not found one of these arrows, and one of them has killed 4 pigs.
Well, I get that again from elevated stands, though.
No, not all the time. Not all the time.
But most.
But the majority, when I look at my stats, Joe, the majority of my shots have been from the ground, spot and stock.
Yeah.
Majority of my kills have been from the ground spot and stock. So
that we don't lose everybody that's out here going that I'm done. I'm not doing that.
Are you worried about losing the arrow? Is that what you're worried about?
So no, I'm talking about money, bro. I'm talking about money.
Well, I can tell you this. I get one shot on a hog with this arrow right here, and I got to go buy another one because it's bent.
Right.
Okay.
That's a Full Metal Jacket.
That's a full FMJ, baby.
That's the worst arrow on the earth.
I understand. I've killed boatloads of animals with it.
I know.
But they're throwaway. They're throwaway.
They're completely disposable.
So Troy, what I want to do though for those people out there is I talked about this.
This is good stuff.
How
Troy.
can people do this without? I mean, do it in
breaking the bank
without breaking the bank.
Okay, so we're going to start at the point. We're going to go the other direction.
It doesn't. Let's start at the point.
Most people. So here's how. This is the progression of archery. We buy ourselves a $1,400 bow because our friends think it's cool.
Yeah, when we could have got away with
we got to get $70 back bars on the thing because our friend has one. We have them stupid bow stands that everybody's putting on their bows and running around with and standing their bows up while they're glassing and stuff. That's another $40. So their bows cost, it's $1,900, and then they say, "Damn, I need ammo." Yeah, you do. I get this. Listen, I get this email all the time. I bought an Elite flagship. I got all the fancy shit on it. I got matching underwear to the color of the camo. I am the man. And I have a Kuiu beanie. Now I need some ammunition and I really want some cheap sticks. And I think, oh wow. I'm gonna stay on the arrows though. Okay. I'm gonna start at the point. You really need to put money in the points. There's nothing in the arrow from the point to the knock that kills the damn animal except for the broadhead. I am a huge proponent of the Magnus stuff. For a great broadhead that's reliable, cut on contact, Mike Som is a friend of mine. He backs that stuff up. You can get $40 set for 3. Shoot Magnus, shoot a Stinger. You can shoot 4-blade. It's fine.
Yeah. The only thing is Magnus is not single bevel though.
No, it's not. No, but we're just
but they're sharp. My son shoots the Stinger and blows step one. Step one for somebody who's trying to do a budget build but still have an optimized setup. Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
You can get 100 grain inserts from somebody somewhere, and Gold Tip does not sponsor me. Sirius does, and Sirius has actually the Supernova, which is a really high grade like Gold Tip kind of carbon. But you could actually, I made this a lot when I was trying to do this. I took 0.006 Beeman ICSs or Gold Tip Hunters, and I got their brass inserts, and I bare shaft tuned those, and they shoot fine. So now we're $100 in shafts for a dozen, I think. I haven't priced in a long time.
Yeah,
we got $40 in broadheads. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so we're at a $250 set of arrows with real broadheads on the front. Mm-hmm. Step one, you can do that.
That's factory.
But they're not single bevel, they're not hand sharpened, they're not the super high end stuff. Right. And you will be much more lethal than you will shooting an Allen broadhead from the Walmart because you spent $1,900 on a bow and praying to God that your Carbon Express, which is the second worst arrow on the planet because their spine charts backwards and fools everybody. Not that I'm opinionated. And
or shooting some mechanical because you don't want to pay the money.
Well, they're expensive too, though, and they're really mechanicals are actually the most expensive broadhead on earth because you'll never get them back. I mean, they break, they fold up, We shot some the other day testing them, and every one of them, the blades were curved like that after going through. I don't know what kind of wood we were shooting. So that is a really good budget build, and Beeman and Gold Tip don't sponsor me at all. I mean, that's just not my deal anymore, but you could do that for $175 and have pretty damn good ammo. The problem you have is will you put the time in to make them fly? And I have videos on that. I have a video called The Process. And then you go through bear shaft and cut the fletchings off one of them, bear shaft them naked arrows. And when they fly pretty damn close to perfect bear shaft, fletchings are amazing.
Yeah. And to your point,
I went through that process with Luis. It was amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So to your point, Troy, you're talking about a budget arrow to get people into understanding heavy arrows a little bit better. You're sacrificing some of the 12 factors, which, you can probably walk us through here shortly. And we do have a summary written up that, we can use as a guide for the people watching in the YouTube channel. But, but at the end of the day, those 12 factors are in order of importance, right? So,
yes, they are.
if
actually,
you,
that's sort of.
sort of. Okay. So maybe more to come there, right? So
yeah, I'll explain that.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, at the end of the day, putting the time to build your arrows, making sure that they're tuned properly. If you do the insert tuning, the knock tuning, and you got your arrow flying, the structure of your arrow is solid and it's flying properly. I mean, you have
Correct.
most of the battle won, and you can still be on a budget. Now,
The
if you
arrow I described is about a 6-factor arrow, 7, right?
Correct.
Not all
correct.
12, but it's getting I said this at ATA. I'm trying to get people to take the next 2 steps.
Yep.
Yes.
So most of the bows these days shoot pretty straight. Hand torque aside, and it's really short bows are annoying. Anything under 30-inch ATA you're starting to get some hand torquey stuff. But the arrows themselves, and not messing with them and not trying to figure out why the arrows don't fly is a real problem. But if I can get people to go from whatever the hell arrow I pull off the shelf that my guy told me about to spine up 1 level, increase your forward to center 4% from 10 to 14 or 16, put a cut on contact on the front and it flies and hits the bullseye. I've helped a lot of people. They're going to be more lethal. Yes. And then if you get, we're just like fishermen. I mean, I got 17 bass fishing rods. What the hell I got 2 on. My wife points this out all the time.
Right. I got 20 of them on the deck.
right.
I know what I'm catching them on.
We know why, but if you really spend the time with the arrows, you'll be in a much better position to make a lethal shot because the arrow will go where it's supposed to, and then it'll penetrate and won't stop. But that's the answer to the budget thing. The budget thing does exist, and Magnus is a great start. Magnus Broadheads are great.
Troy, what were you saying your FOC number needed to be?
So I prefer people to, my first 19. AHA was 16%.
Okay.
And arrows for people, the people that know under FOC front of center, right? Yeah. Forward of center. Right.
Yep. Right. So it's if you imagine just balancing a stick on your finger with nothing on it, that's the middle. That's 0 FOC. There's no forward to center. The
0 FOC would be right here.
Right. Right.
If it would balance.
Right. So the amount, where's yours balance out at? Come on, baby. So he's way forward to center. You're probably at what, 17, 20 there?
Yeah, this is 18. The 710 grain are 22. So this is 650 grains.
And the ones he built me are like 18, I believe.
Right. So hold that arrow right about where that point is. And get back on camera.
Yeah, he's on it.
Okay. You're holding the arrow in the front there where you had it?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at the amount of arrow shaft that's from his fingers back to the fletchings, it's longer than the point from his fingers to the point.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
It's a basic leverage equation. The fletchings have more leverage and can help steer that thing more than the broadhead. The broadhead also is a wing. If you go back to the middle, like a weather vane, both ends of the arrow have an equivalent amount of leverage. So the arrow can go like this.
Yes.
The back is no more dominant than the front.
I learned that the hard way trying to shoot bear shafts with my broadhead.
Yeah, broadheads, bear shafts are real bad.
It's not good.
I try to turn around it. I got a friend of mine.
The secondary component to that is when you have a very short forward section, because the weight's all forward, it's very stiff.
Yeah.
When it hits something hard, it doesn't bend in the middle. It bends at that point his fingers were on, that short spot.
Sure.
And the shaft goes like this and wiggles and keeps going. It just keeps driving. If it's in the middle, the shaft actually bends.
Oh, yeah.
Like this. we've seen bends as wide as like 4 inches, 3.5 inches. The arrow hits and goes as it's penetrating. Well, it's hitting the side of the critter.
So I want people to, I have seen this, and I want them to understand, I have seen, and I actually had this happen to one of my hunters. I had an elk quartering away, shot went in the pocket, quartering away, right there at the shoulder. Arrow came out all the way in a complete different angle on the other side of the animal, missing totally the lung on the other side. I've actually, and we've had another where an animal was shot broadside in the pocket and ends up coming out the hip on the other side of the animal.
Yeah, that's a redirect. Yep. That's the arrows flexing in the middle. It's probably under spine as well. So it's very common for people to want to go fast. They just shoot whatever light arrow. They don't think anything about the spine. So if you shoot a 400 spine arrow, right? If you shoot a 400 spine arrow with a 70-pound bow, it's fast as hell. It's going like this all the way down range. It's literally
video it.
It's wiggling like this, and then when it hits, it just bananas. I mean, it literally goes like a metronome because it's so soft. The shaft itself is very soft, and it never stabilizes. So it's flying like this, it's fluttering, and then it hits, and the whole shaft is fluttering. When it hits something hard, it exponentially flutters, which makes that arrow bend. It turns, it bites wherever, and then keeps going, right? Now, I told Zach Farrenball this at the hunting public when he described this. If we could make it go to the front every time, this would be badass.
Yeah.
If we could make it hit them and go to forward every time towards the front legs, hey, we'd be the deadliest guys ever. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, misinformation, like when you're talking about FOC, what are you saying is the best gain, the gain you should have, the one point that would probably work for, and I say work for everybody, but I know, like, you know, there's a lot of variables for that. But especially when we're talking about different game, I want to continue talking about elk. And when we're doing that, what should people look for in FOC?
16 to 20% should be your goal.
16
minimal.
To 20%? 15?
It just depends on, remember, I'm a big arrow flight guy. So if you shoot an arrow that's set 19% forward to center and it flies a little sideways, but a 17% arrow shoots perfect bear shaft, you shoot the 17% arrow.
Yeah.
You don't shoot the bad arrow flight. Vice versa, if the heavier forward to center and you don't like the trajectory, it flies like a dart, open up your pins, dummy, because it's flying perfect.
And you know, when we went through the process with Luis, we went all the way up to 300 grain inserts and this, that, and the other, get me to 650, 700 grain. It did not fly as good as the one we've optimized, right? So
that's one of the questions I had for you, Troy, because you know, it was, you know, with Gilbert, it was great to go through the process. Gilbert has incredible form, and he was able to shoot. I had him shooting over 60 shots in just one day, going through this process, and it was an awesome experiment because we tried 3 different spines out of his bow, and we alternated from 100 grain to 315 grain field points, and he has, you know, he had a 100 grain insert in there. So as we went through the process, it was super interesting to see that his bow and his stance really like I'm shooting everything through paper, right? Kind of anal like that. And so we saw that everything was grouping on the 300 spine, Gilbert?
That's right.
The 300 spine was considerably tearing way better than the 250 and the 200, right? And Gilbert shoots, you know, 68 pounds. Gilbert is what we saw on that helium, and he's got 29 and a half inch draw length, and so it just. The 300 spine was a no-brainer, and then we could see that it really liked from 100 grain broadhead, counting that it already had the 100 grain insert, so 200 grain tip weight, to the 150 grain broadhead or field point.
Okay.
And so we're like, man, this is like, it just really likes it. So when we came to 125 with the 100 grain, the total arrow weight ended up being right around 550. Okay. So it really wasn't far from where he was, but when I'm telling you, he was shooting bullet holes, like perfect bullet holes with that setup through paper. And when we did the knock tuning on all his arrows, once I built the arrows before even fletching them, all of them eventually, I mean, we found out through that process that he had to do some modifications on his rest a little bit. But then after we got that set up, man, everything was just all 6 arrows, perfect bullet holes through papers. The graphs that we're seeing here is showing kind of like, to your point, right? We increased the weight of that arrow by about 56 grains, okay, from where he had it before, so he was shooting pretty close to what his bow liked to begin with. So that was an 11% increase in weight. And really, it only dropped 2% in speed, meaning he was shooting 264 out of the bow, and now he was shooting 258. So negligible speed drop, but he gained 6% in kinetic energy, which I know not to the point, we don't need to worry about it, but I wanted to reflect it. And he gained 9% in momentum just by increasing 56 grains on his arrow and barely losing any speed.
And he has really perfect arrow flight. Right.
Yes.
So
and he has perfect arrow flight.
That's the thing that doesn't show. These are charts I'm used to doing myself. Y'all really did a lot of work. This is impressive. Nobody does this. This is the kind of work you have to put in.
I'm telling you, brother, you got the leader of the Venezuelan mafia here, man. He's the real deal.
I love this stuff, right? And so, and that was my question to you, right? In this case, Beto's bow yielded a 551 grain arrow, right? That is flying perfectly. Now, we're not at the heavy bone threshold of 650, but in my mind, it's like, why am I going to try to square a round peg into a square hole or vice versa when the whole process is telling me this is what's optimized for his setup.
Right.
So is that the proper way to go about it, Troy? Is that the proper way to go about it in doing
That's exactly how you go about it.
Gotcha.
Right. And then, so I don't know if I'll ever publish this on my YouTube channel because I already get 1,000 messages a month. It would get, but you could take the 250 spine arrows and then you can actually fiddle with the length.
Yes.
And you can start getting super pointy hat. Let's say the trad guys do it. A proper trad. I don't know what the trad guy in our room here does, but a proper trad guy puts a full length arrow on his bow, bare shaft, and starts cutting it down until it shoots straight. That's proper.
And with regards to his setup, the broadhead is barely clearing his hands. So I mean, we got it to where we said, hey, let's cut it to make sure that broadhead is not getting in the way of your hands, right?
Right. So you could take the 250, get another 250 spine, make it longer for the heavier. Yes. And start working back again. That's a super pointy hat strategy.
Gotcha.
And the other thing is his FOC
optimize it. Right.
Yeah, his FOC went up to exactly 17%.
Right. That's the number. I mean, now in the study, 19% FOC, which also correlates to about a 600 and some odd plus grain arrow.
Yeah.
To get there was the spot where the bones really started
showing a difference.
I blew through a hog a couple of weeks ago, blew through both plates, right?
Yep.
And pinned him to the ground, and it went through both of them, right? And pinned him to the ground. It is about an 85-pound hog. And I mean, it's not one of them 250-pounders, but I'm going to tell you right now, man, you ain't sticking a knife through that big plate, right? So
no, they're pretty tough. They're durable animals.
It blew him down like you'd have shot him with a 30-06. Like, pow. Was over,
Yeah. It's really, really fun. It's a completely different experience when the arrows are flying right.
Really is.
And everything's good. But
I shot one this weekend. I shot him through the knuckle, right here at the knuckle, right? Both knuckles. And it did not get a full pass through. It was sticking out a little bit. And when he fell over, he broke my daggum arrow. and really aggravated me then, because that's the only arrow. That's the only arrow that he broke. But man, it went through heavy bone on both sides and busted him up. He didn't go but about 60 yards. But
and look, Joe, I know that you want to concentrate it on elk, but I think that one of the cool things about, at least in my journey, my experiences with hogs have led me to. Absolutely. Yeah, had led me to, realize get to this realizations, and, listening to guys like Mr. Troy is really all in preparation of how do I set myself up better for my elk hunt, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you have a target-rich environment there in Texas with something that you love to eat, and man, I mean, you're not going to find anything tougher. And because in order to kill that pig, it's built differently than an elk. All those vitals are up right in there, up high, close in there. So, I mean, if you're going to put one of those down quick, you've got to have something that's going to punch right through that critter. Grinders tuning in, thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast. Our goal is to share our knowledge and help you flatten that learning curve so that you too can have some of the very same incredible experiences that have given all of us here at ElkBros a lifetime of memories. If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our Base Camp Elk Hunting Training Camp, the first in a series of online courses from our Blue Collar Elk Academy. Our Base Camp Training Camp allows me to use my coaching style and share almost 40 years of elk hunting experiences successfully hunting elk on public lands, as well as over 20 years guiding hunters of all ages and experience levels. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets. Our camp will prepare you specifically from that final moment most in your control, those final minutes or seconds the elk is in front of you, backwards through each step and level, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. Because y'all, you've already been there. You know what it looks like. By tapping my 30 years of teaching and coaching experience, our camps are developed considering multiple learning modes with text, visuals, audio, as well as video. And Base Camp will benefit those new to elk hunting all the way to the 10 to 15 year vet. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding. I get that. I totally get that. It's just, you're going to have old school farts like me. I've killed 36 elk being underspined most of my life. When everybody else was going to 100 grain, broadheads and going light setup so that they could go fast, I never worried about that. I was at 270 feet per second. I was fine. I was going to stay with 125 grain broadhead on there because I believed that was going to smack things. And I'm no scientist, but I did it that way where, you were with me, Luis. I shoot an animal. I know I'm only 15, 18 yards. I shoot an elk, go through on the onside, arrow goes all the way through, hits the leg bone on the other side and shatters it, explodes it on the other side with a 3-blade wasp chisel tip on it. 120.
That was the second shot. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first shot.
That's a great look. That's a great broadhead. I'm telling you, they're tough and they open up a big wound channel. That's something to be said for that. My son when he was 10, he shot that what you were talking about, Troy, the Magnus Stinger, and he's shooting maybe 35, 38 pounds. But he was blowing through whitetails and pigs with that.
But Troy said it earlier. When you shoot, in fact, I think I have this in here. Ken's shot selection location of a hit mitigate some of these 12 factors, in other words, that you're having to look, and you said it earlier, a perfect shot in the right spot is going to blow. I mean,
every time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to get its job done.
It's when we're looking to have a little
that
error.
very well, that he is working towards imperfection, you know,
sure.
if there's a mistake that happens on that. So,
and on bone, so on your example on bone, on an exiting, when it's pushing out on the bone, it has actually more likely to break the bone because the bone is flexing away from the animal as opposed to on the impact side. Right. So that's a really common thing. And Ed will tell you himself, sometimes arrows break bones that aren't supposed to break bones. It happens. They hit the right spot. Whatever situation it is. I have a lot of people send me pictures and say, I'm shooting 425 grains. Look at this scapula, right? I blew right through it. It happens.
It does.
It does. I can't deny that it does happen. I did it when I was shooting lighter stuff myself, but it's just a percentage game, right? That's the deal. It's like
what's
highest
crazy
percentage doesn't going to happen.
And that's the thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that point is made, that what this system is working towards is those things that your imperfections, either from the shooter or from that animal moving, that causes something that could end up causing it to be a marginal shot, is going to have more effectiveness on those types of situations.
And I hope everybody got some wow factor out of the spreadsheets y'all just saw. And the amount of effort these guys put into making sure that arrow's flying perfect.
Absolutely.
Right? And that was the big thing for me, is I got buddies of mine tell me all the time, does your back end of your arrow kick out? You know, I'm like, bro, you're losing all of your momentum, your momentum, because it's not hitting with the right type of force. So a lot of that for me was, I didn't have that going on, but I got friends of mine that have. Luis and Manano both have went through that with their shaft, kicking out or something like that. So going through this process for me was all about, number one, getting a better ammunition that's going to penetrate better if I do make a mistake or the animal moves or whatever, and having better ammunition at the end of the day, right? And then having a better shaft that's going to fly better, And one of the things that's interesting about the full metal jackets are pretty well disposable because they're going to bend when they hit something hard, So I wanted to try one thing about the flight
thing is you can really, really just help your overall accuracy. That's glaringly obvious. But if I challenge everybody shooting their bow right now who hasn't ever bear shafted, just cut the fletchings off one. And if it tears 5 inches right, shooting through paper, but you were shooting bullet holes with a fletched arrow, do know this: the arrow is still flying sideways and the arrows are compensating for it. So you're losing speed and you're losing efficiency right off the bow because the arrows are lying, the fletchings are lying to you.
Right.
And the cleaner you can make that arrow fly bear shaft, the more mistakes you can make.
And I got a question for you.
Downhill or kneel or whatever.
I got a bit of a technical question for you on that. But before that, I want to explain something. So precisely what you're talking about, Joe, is that when you look at this room, Mr. Troy, all of these guys are extremely experienced bow hunters, right? Mm-hmm. I'm the youngster, the green hat on this group and trying to learn, right? So, but I got a little bit of an engineering
on the hunting side of an animal, not on the equipment. So
right. But that's where I'm going, right? So I got a little bit of an engineering mindset to where I realized, okay, so how do I reduce the potential mistakes that can occur for me in a mounted? So there's something that I cannot control, that is my lack of experience yet compared to these guys. But there are things that I can do and that are under my control that I can make to improve my shooting, my accuracy. And what are those things? So the failures that I was having with regards to the arrow flight led me down this path. And thus the reason why I started to looking into this, because see, I'm not Joe that instinctively draws his bow with that looks like a recurve, and it has pulleys, but looks like a recurve, and it's probably 100 pounds when you pull it. And right. And he blows through an elk, and they don't go far, and they drop in the spot. He knows exactly where to put it. He's got this instinctive mind. I don't have that. Right. So what can I do to compensate for all of those mistakes that I was going to do? So that's why, Joe, like, there's that difference. I had to compensate in one way or another. Going through the process, there are a couple of things that, I've obviously, you can tell that I watched a lot of your videos and, learn a lot from you, and I appreciate it. Huge fan, tons of respect. Thank you. One of the things I kind of did was I realized that if I'm going to be testing different spines, I want to make sure those shafts are also noctune, because for some reason, what I'm seeing on my end is that noctuning could potentially have more of an impact on paper tear than maybe some of the other factors. So in my own mind, I'm thinking if I really want a good comparison between different spines, I want those 3 spines that I'm testing properly noctune. Does that make sense, or am I going too far?
No, if they will noctune. So if you shoot a 400 spine arrow, it's probably going to be a banana. It's never going to.
Right, but you're looking for improvement, right? So the best knock point for each shaft before you start testing, right?
So for everybody who wonders what we're talking about, noctuning is the process of actually rotating the nock in the back of the shaft. The shafts, the carbon arrows all have a spine. They have a stiff side. They have a seam, and you're trying to rotate the nock and find the spot where that particular shaft bends perfectly for you shooting the bow. And I've tested this. So my son Caleb, and my nephew Charlie are 28.5 inch draw. They cannot shoot my bow bare shaft.
Gilbert and I proved it, and we tried same bows, same arrows, same bows, different arrows, same arrows, different bows. Every time it was different. Yeah.
So the bow, could not the shoot shooter, the ape hanging onto the damn arrow onto the bow makes a big difference. How you release, where you push, all that. You're really customizing this arrow flight for exactly you and the way you do stuff. That's what I discovered when I started doing this, is because I handed my bow to my son, and then I had this bow that I couldn't shoot. It was a torque sensitive Hellion from, it was the worst for me.
Right.
And however Caleb grips it, it's just boom, boom, boom. He's like, I love this thing. I grab it, arrows are flying sideways and ripping the paper and, shooting back at me. They're so bad.
Yeah. I shoot a 6 or 7 year old bow because I absolutely enjoy shooting it.
Do not give up a helium or a switchback ever.
Agreed.
Great.
Never give up a helium or a switchback. If you have one and you're going to give it up, call me.
Please.
Yeah. We're on the same boat. We're fans of the heliums. That's a perfect segue for the next question I have, which, because I never practice with my field points, once I went through the process, my bare shafts are shooting perfect bullet holes through paper. I have already done the insert tuning, so I just screw on my broadheads and I fletch. Mm-hmm. I go to the range and shoot. My arrows are applying perfect. I no problems, right? But the other day I heard a term is like broadhead tuning. Okay. And I'm like, what the heck are they talking about with broadhead tuning? So what they do is I guess, I'm sure you're familiar with it. You shoot your field point, and then you shoot your broadheads, and then you see where those broadheads land in relation to your field point. So apparently, obviously there's differences of where that lands and what you need to tweak on your bow to make sure that, your field points are flying true, just like your broadheads. So I went out there and that was this week, and I'm like, okay, what is this all about? So I put my field point on, boom, bullet hole, or I'm sorry, just 10 ring, right? And then I go back and I screw my broadhead, boom, 10 ring with one bow. Then I picked up my other bow, did the exact same thing. So I didn't have that problem. So my question is, Is going through the process going to eliminate the issue of having to broadhead tune?
Yeah,
or is there something to broadhead tuning to where even if you change broadheads, even if they're the same weight, you still have to check on broadhead tuning to make sure?
No, I shoot everything. So I shoot
that's
3 blades, 2 blades, 4 blades.
They all fly true.
I even change the weight some, and they don't really get crazy. But the arrows are bare shaft, knock tuned, perfect.
I can shoot all of these
broadheads there.
I can shoot all of these broadheads, and they will all shoot the same. That's
because you've built really good ammunition. Like you built good sticks.
Okay. And that was the question. It's just the clarification of, and then if I shoot a field point, it will fly the same as all of these as well. So that was just the question, is like, man, is there something to the way the broadhead is shaped that will affect the knock tuning?
So the only thing that I've seen on broadhead shape that causes anything is 3-blade machined broadheads seem to drag a little more than everything else. I shot it through a lab radar, and they do drag a little more. You can just, it's 2 inches at 50 yards. It's not a foot, right? It's just a problem. They're just the way they're shaped. But I found that machined 3-blade broadheads through a lab radar do slow down some just because they're aerodynamically, but they're really good design.
Machined 3-blade.
And that's like, Luis says all he ever shoots is his broadheads. I've never shot broadheads. I've always shot field point. Well, and then I'll tell you why, is because my original way that I would do it, the way I worked this was I would take the blades out of my Wasp broadhead, and I would shoot my Wasp broadhead tip as a field point. And then I would do that as well and I had no difference between that and my field point. And so once I realized that in my shooting through all of these years that I did it, there was no reason for me to shoot my broadheads. I was hitting exactly where I was looking on both of them.
So, if it's working for you, I can't tell you not to do it because you kill a hell of a lot of elk. But
yeah, exactly.
Aerodynamically speaking, from an aerodynamic engineering perspective, you're putting a wing on the front.
Sure, absolutely.
And everybody on Earth should practice with lighted. If you shoot a lighted knock, you should shoot a lighted knock and a broadhead. And make sure that that's going to fly.
And because I think early on
I'll give you an example, a practical example from me messing around. So I was trying to maximize my forward to center and get it up. I'm shooting 25%, but I have an outrageously heavy arrow right now. And so I went down from a 250 spine to a 300 spine, and I got bullet holes with field points. And I said it was a new carbon shaft that was a micro, super light, and I went down in spine praying to God it would fly. I got bullet holes with field points. It was like 575 grains, but it was like 23% forward center. It was almost a unicorn arrow for its weight. And when I put broadheads on it, they shot about like that at 40. And it was weird. They would just kind of go like that. It wasn't doing loops, or it wasn't taken off, or there wasn't a flyer. There wasn't a 6-inch flyer. They were just weird. And I grabbed a 250, same shaft. I couldn't shoot them at the same spot. So that shaft was just on spine, being just a little too almost right, and it was a little too soft. And so when I put the extra drag on the front from the broadhead, it was just like that. It was just, and you could tell wasn't me. You know when you pull one, when you jerk the release or whatever.
You feel it.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would shoot and I would just go, that just was weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it like 5 times, and I grabbed a 250 and it went right down.
Right down the middle.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's right on spine. So you really should shoot broadheads. Now in Texas, where we're shooting 20 yards and stuff, I don't know that this is as critical.
Sure.
It should be serious. It's so close, and it's kind of a setup deal. But if you're elk hunting where 40's normal, and 50's really logical, man, you're talking about these. Remember all these components that we're trying to narrow, and then you're shooting groups that big, and then the elk moves, and it got that big, right? And that's just one of those things that it could have been like this and gone to that. as opposed to that going to that.
Yeah.
And it's just the arrow. Nothing else really happened. And it wandered. It's like I have a 223 break open rifle that I give to every new shooter. It's got a hammer and a scope and just one shot. And it's got 38 names written on the stock from people who killed their first animal that I've hunted with.
It
will not shoot a Barnes bullet.
Yeah.
And I want it to shoot a Barnes bullet because that Barnes 50, those 45 grain Barnes bullets will go through anything.
Absolutely.
But it shoots groups like that.
Yeah.
With a Barnes bullet, right? And then I give it to a kid and they're shaking and the groups open up like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the soft points shoot groups like that.
Right.
And so the group's this.
Yes.
I don't shoot the X bullet. I want it to shoot the X bullet. So, but I'm giving up accuracy and I know the gun's not shooting great. It's shooting pretty good.
There's just so many of these people out there, though, that aren't in a situation where they, number one, can go to an archery shop to try these different things. They live out in the middle of nowhere and don't have the opportunity to buy all the different shafts. And
that's why I have the test kits on Sirius. Yeah, that's why we built the test kits.
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about people who don't either have a good shop or don't have a shop that's got a range. There's a lot of shops that just don't have a 20-yard range. They're just a shop, and that's fine. But I'm thinking about the highest percentage of people, and quite honestly, probably in the bow hunting community, there's very few people who aren't tinkerers and don't know which end of the wrench is the box end. They know how to swing a hammer. It's a little bit more, blue collarish, at least in your mindset. There's certainly a lot of white collar people, but they're willing to tinker. There's a small percentage of people who just say, just give me a bow, whatever. Okay, I can't do anything about those people. They don't give a damn about anything anyway. But that's why we built the test kits at Sirius with the two different spines, all have the same inserts and then extra field points. And you can go in your backyard and do what y'all did and just literally just pound away and see what flies. And then you can order those arrows. I mean, I'm being a little self-serving here, but I think we're the only people ordering the opportunity to get multiple spines, multiple field point weights, and then have arrows right behind them. And it's a system I set up just thinking about, well, nobody offers that. I spent probably $1,000 on arrows trying to figure this out.
Because most guys are going to go look at an arrow chart. They're going to look at what their poundage, what their draw length is on that arrow, what they should be ordering, like I did for years. And you know what? I would have been all right because I use the same.
Yeah, if we just didn't tell you this stuff, you'd be fine.
Yeah, until some drug dealer gave me a carbon arrow and messed up my whole life, man. It was like
drug dealer, man.
Yeah,
and me.
And that's how I started. I started it with the kit that Sirius Archery has, and their webpage is SiriusArchery.com, and it's SIRIUS Archery Constellation.com, and then we've talked to them. Those guys are actually great. They've helped me a ton, and they have given us a code to share, which is ElkBros 10. If you want to go in there and buy shafts and stuff like that,
You'll
all
get
the ranch fairy
discount on those then.
10% discount, correct. All the ranch fairy stuff doesn't account for you can't get the discount on all the ranch fairy stuff because this is all like
Sirius.
Troy's, Sirius with Troy and all his equipment and stuff like that. But that's the way I did it. I actually went there and got the kit, and then been calling them. I talked to a gentleman there called Seth, and he's just been super with me. And
he's the owner.
Yeah.
I talked to Seth today. He killed an alligator today.
His bow.
Yeah,
that's cool, man.
So he's test driving a new 150 grain broadhead that we're bringing out, and it worked.
And
they shot
bringing out 150 grain.
And one thing,
150 grain 3 blades. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Troy, is that for those people out there that don't have that engineer mind like Luis and aren't going to be doing all these sheets. I mean, you look at the paperwork this guy's done here, man. This is like a corporate presentation, dude. I mean, he's hired. So because of that, is there a basic formula that hunters can use without having to be as granular as Luis, but wanting to put the time in to make sure that they have what they need out there?
I've not really found it. It's so difficult. We discussed the fact that the four of us can't shoot the same bow despite the same draw length and being able to handle the draw weight, right?
Would you say, Troy,
it's just a really annoying deal. Bows suck. Let's just really put it out there, right? I can zero 4 300 Magnums and mail them to you guys, and y'all can go deer hunting.
Yeah.
I promise you. I can build y'all 4 guns, zero them 2 inches high at 100, and then you're good to 3 without mess shooting the gun.
Right.
And bow and arrows are super custom.
Yes.
Each bow.
I just haven't found a way to do it.
Everybody's shooting form.
Very different.
So, yeah.
They're different, Joe. And one of the things is that also that it's kind of tough in the industry is the fact that, you know, I shared with you the charts that Sirius has in their page as a reference to based on your poundage, based on your arrow length, and based on your there you go. So based on your bow speed, based on your draw weight, and based on your tip weight and your arrow length, you can kind of get a reference. And I say a reference because it gives you an idea of what kind of spine you should have. And this is for their arrows. Yeah. Okay. Correct. So, I mean, not every manufacturer use the same
carbon
method or carbon type to come up with the spine, and the spine numbers may not mean the same. You may have 2 different shafts from 2 different manufacturers with the same spine, and they may bend differently. Right. You know, so that's why it's so difficult, and that's why
one of the reasons I signed with Sirius is because that Apollo shaft was so consistent. I had 5 or 6 brands of shafts in the garage just before I was sponsored, back when I was just trying to figure all this stuff out and I was buying everything. And that Apollo shaft is one of the best behaving shafts. So the higher grade stuff, the higher grade carbons, the higher priced, unfortunately, carbons are better and more consistent from end to end. And I have found that to be true buying every arrow on the planet when I was trying to figure this stuff out.
And they are super tough. Like I shot through a pig. It pinned him on a log behind him. The pig rolled over the shaft, ran away with the arrow in him. I found the broadhead stuck in the log with a parted insert. The insert parted halfway inside of the shaft. And when I recovered the shaft that was in the pig, the shaft did not break. And the remaining of the insert was still glued inside of the shaft. So it parted the insert inside the shaft, and the shaft did not part.
Yeah. They're pretty durable. They got that woven on exterior. They're solid arrows.
RC, as I mean, you've shot traditional archery, and listening to all this stuff, are there questions or concerns that come to your mind with that? And Chav, you shooting the lighter setup, I want to come to you next.
I think Troy hit it right on the head. You asked the question, what does a person do the first thing they do? And that's take your bow, regardless of what it is, and get you a bare shaft and see what that arrow does. I mean, it's going to tell you. He hit it right on the head as far as the fletching and all that's going to make some difference, but I mean, it's still going to fly right if it's right.
So would you say, Troy, starting with knock tuning is the number one start to getting on the right track?
Yes.
Right. So that's the thing. The knock tuning thing is interesting because if you bare shaft one arrow and you don't knock tune all of them, you're still going to have inconsistent. It's going to be damn close. It's going to be better than if you didn't bare shaft and try to figure out what flies with the right point. Yeah. Not that. Yeah. But if you don't bare shaft and knock tune, bare shaft every one of them, and it sucks. I hate getting a dozen arrows now.
Yeah.
I can't go back.
It takes so much time, man.
It does.
I look at them and go,
a lot of shots but of course my rest.
So how much of a difference are we talking about?
We're talking about broadheads.
I'm sorry?
We're talking about broadheads flying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're talking about if you have kind of a off-the-shelf arrow, we're talking about groups that you could have, remember back in the day when you didn't know anything and you weren't trying and you had a weird flyer?
Right.
What if that's your shot at 30 yards? What if that's your flyer? What if you leave that in the batch and then you shoot at your elk and it's the flyer and it goes 4 inches left and the elk moves a little bit? and we're 6 inches off of intended point of aim because you got the flyer.
Well, so that's what's interesting. Was I the only person that used to shoot your arrows and then
there you go.
You would number your number one arrow?
You're not the only one that did that.
Yeah, I still do it. I
See what that is? That says P. That's P for practice.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I've got a few of those too. Right. I got the P for practice.
Yeah.
And
my arrows are all marked.
This one is number 5. I mean, Luis marked them all. This is number 5, right?
So is that going to be your 5th arrow at an elk, or is that just number 5 for the
this
one?
This is
those
virgin.
5 arrows, those 6 arrows. He can shoot any of those.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's just that when I gave him the document that shows each arrow and how much each one of the weighs, he knows which one is which. But all those arrows fly completely true. But to your point, Joe, I think what Troy is saying is like, look, once you go through the process and you kind of see it, for me, it gets in my head. I want to spend the time on each arrow, right? To your point, you got to at least do the due diligence. If you don't want to go through the process and you're going to be hunting with 5 arrows, you got to be shooting those 5 arrows consistently with their broadhead and see how they're flying, and then pick your best arrows, that ones that you're comfortable with, and then know how they perform. But what you can't do, you're doing a disfavor to yourself, to the animal and everything, is just kind of buy them off the shelf, put them in your quiver, and go out there hunting.
Oh, no, you got to get behind. You got to get behind the string, man. You got to know what your equipment's doing.
And for me, for a long time, it was the spin test. You set it on the floor and watch it spin. Man, if it's true, that's really good, right? If the next one wobbles a little bit, well, you move that one to the side. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you something about that. You can shoot a pretty wobbly broadhead on a perfect arrow and it'll fly.
I believe
don't tell anybody that on public here.
I believe you, man, because when I spin test this one here that Luis built me, it's got a little bit of a wobble to it because that broadhead's been shot through 2 hogs, and it's got a little bit of a little lean to that.
I've messed with it with glue on broadheads, and I'll just heat it up and spin it and kind of get it a little wonky.
Yeah.
Back up to 40, and the shaft is right, and they go choo.
Yeah.
And they shoot pretty good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it hunting, but I'm just do stupid stuff like that all the time.
So what are you hunting with now, Troy? Broadhead wise.
I'm shooting the tough head, the original tough head, the long tough head,
Gotcha.
the one that's the most tough head's original legacy head's the most Ashby head on the planet. So it's 3 1/4 inches long by inch and the 16th, and the head itself is 225, has a 100 grain adapter in it, and then I have a 100 grain insert. So I'm shooting 500 grains, 450 grains in the point, and 730 grains a night, 24.5% forward.
Sorry, Joe, I know you're trying to get to.
So there's no way you're ever going to shoot a field point because you ain't going to find one that has that.
No, I've got all the toys. I've got 500 grain field points. Yeah, actually, the heaviest field point I have is 600 grains. I have 600 grain broadheads.
Where do you find a 600 grain field point, man?
There's a couple of manufacturers that make them, and then Tough Head's making a 400 grain broadhead that for dangerous game. Rob Nielsen's putting them together right now for hippo. He's making a 1,100 grain arrow for hippo.
Wow.
The one you're shooting, Mr. Troy, the one you're shooting, is it the Evolution series single bevels?
No, I've shot a bunch of stuff with the Evolution, and I actually backed that head. It's one of my sponsored heads, but I'm shooting the long one. You've got one that's similar to it there. I think, was that an A
head? It is a boy.
So I'm gonna go to Chav for a second because Chav, I know that you always have concerns with your shot because of your poundage and stuff when you shoot. So do you have any questions or concerns about this?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious what you would recommend as far as the total arrow weight and the weight of the tip weight. I send Luis some information, see what he can do with it. Because I shoot about 55. I think everybody else here shoots like 110.
Yeah, right.
They all got hammers. I got a pea shooter. So what would you recommend for?
I would still have 550 grain. I'm still having that 550 grain range. The advantage you're going to have is you're going to be able to shoot a lower spined arrow. You're probably going to be able to shoot a 350 spine arrow, which is super light.
Mm-hmm.
And your forward to center is going to be outstanding.
Yeah.
So you get to point at these guys and say, your forward to center is just 17. Yeah, I got 20.
Mine's 25.
So yeah. You can just kick them in the ball for that.
Right.
But I would have a very, very high quality. And I always start at the point. Very high quality.
Is he going to have any? Is he going to have any tail waggle with a crosswind on something like that?
No, they actually fly. They follow the shaft instead of doing this in the air. Just flies a little bit off, but it stays. They tend to plane into the wind. They tend to,
because I have noticed a little planing when I do shoot.
Right, so they tend to the nose tends to go into the wind and stay on line better than a lower forward to center arrow the tail tends to steer back like this, and it tends to veer more. It's basic model rocketry. They do this in model rockets to keep them from flying off too much.
Will there be a big change in the pin setting?
Yeah.
So that
20 is 20, 30 is 30, and 40 is 40, and in between is 5 yards. There you go, buddy. Still all the same.
So what I told,
just make adjustments.
Yeah, we have multiple ladies shooting. Well, like I said, Rhonda shoots 38 pounds at 25 inches, and she's killed 6 bull nilgai and had 2 pass throughs.
Wow!
And she killed one at 40.
That's serious.
What I told Chav was, I said, yeah, exactly that. I said 350 spine. I think he's shooting the 500 spine full metal jackets now. So I told him.
Oh God!
Yeah. So I said,
God help me.
Yeah. So I told him. I said, look, if we,
Luis, here's what you should do. Here's what you should do for him, so his pin gaps don't change. I've done this with a lot of full metal jacket people who shoot the worst arrow on earth. Just build about the same weight, but put it all in the front.
Yeah. So exactly. So what I told him is that we could do is get a 350 spine, the arrow, even that Apollo one is 8.8 grains, right? Mm-hmm. So it's actually lighter on the shaft. And then I told him, I say, we can even bring your tip weight to close to 200, just the total tip weight. And then, so I told him 185 to be exact, but maybe we can bring it up higher. And then we can get his total arrow weight to about 500 grain. And his pin gap should not change that much from what he's shooting.
No, they won't change that much because your forward to center is going to go up. I've done this with a lot of full metal jacket folks. And what I do is I take them to the next, generally they come in one level too low on spine. So a typical 70-pound shooter will have a 340.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I'll take them to a 300. I add 100 grains in the front, and they're about 60 grains heavier total than they were with a full metal jacket.
Yes, sir.
But the arrows fly like a dart.
Right. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
So, yeah, just shuck those arrows. Luis, if you could get a 400 spine arrow to fly for him, ooh, talk about you. We're getting unicorny there.
That way he'll get way more FOC.
Right. And we just need to make sure we're managing the broadheads on the front with everybody. You got to be shooting good broadheads.
Could he still shoot a Magnus Stinger?
Yeah, sure. Shoot the 150 with a 100 grain insert.
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing it right, correct, the arrow that Luis proposes, there would be no change at all in the way my pins are set right now.
There might be a little bit of a change.
Arrow, I don't think you're going to have much change in pin gap.
Okay.
You're gonna have to. Yeah, it's going to be about the same. You're going to have to go ahead and
test it
again. But
for sure.
But you're pretty much shooting like you have.
That's simple though. It's a simple, easy adjustment.
Right.
You know, you just chase your arrow with your pin.
Or you just
once you get used to the trajectory, it doesn't bother you anymore. It just becomes normal.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, gosh, man. What do guys shooting recurves ever do, man? I mean. It's like you never killed an animal with a recurve. Oh my gosh, man. So, it's just getting behind your equipment, knowing your equipment, shooting it, man, knowing what it does. So, and that's the thing that when I heard people, one of the cons I heard was people said, well, my trajectory with my pins, if I'm a little off, I could end up shooting way lower. And, I was like, I thought of it this way. is that number one, if your pin says 20 and you're shooting for 20, if your pin says 30 and you're shooting for 30, you should hit where you're at.
Correct.
If you are a poor judge of distance or you haven't used a rangefinder and you do shoot that, man, I like the idea of it dropping lower and completely missing the animal myself. You know, if I don't
actually want to be low because no animal on earth jumps up.
That's right. They all squat.
And another thing that nobody does, I'm going to do a video on this. When we were younger, we used to just walk out there, know the distance, and then we'd take 4 steps back and try to figure it out.
Yeah. That's right.
I don't know why nobody practices that.
I do it all. Yeah, that's all.
Because the perspective is going to help you with the distance. It's like closing one eye and trying to touch something in front of you. You lose your perspective because you only have one eye.
I'm talking about literally going to the 3D range, take a laser rangefinder, know that it's 27.
And back up to 31.
And just put it in your pocket and take 4 steps back and go, that's about right, and learn to shoot that way. Because if you go to half full draw on an elk and you've lasered him and he takes 4 steps, you're not going to, most people aren't letting down. And you're lying if you say you would. Yeah. You're a liar. You're going to aim a little higher and send it. So you're an idiot if you don't agree.
You know, you're right. I drew my bow pretty quick, not this year, but last year. I drew my bow. The elk was actually walking into the lane that I needed him to walk into. I had ranged that lane before Joe was calling the bull. The bull, I like followed the script. Okay. I knew he was between 50 and 60 yards somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And when he walked in, I felt like it was closer to 50. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm just like, I know the furthest part of that was 60 on my laser. He's closer to me. So I felt like that was about 50, 56 yards. And I put my 50-yard pin right in the center of him and sent it. Whew. And I mean, it was que sera.
That's something people should practice. You really should, because that's very realistic.
I feel most of the time it's not the pin that does it for me. It's that feeling that I'm in the right spot. You know, I mean, you can hear on the video this year when they said 53, poof. I mean, I cut it loose because I was already feeling like I was in the right spot, you know.
Well, the funny thing about pins, if you're shooting a multi-pin sight, there's only 5 or 6 exact distances anyway. You're always gap shooting.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that this is brain surgery.
It's not.
But you know what, Joe? The first guy I ever heard talking about the V sight was Mr. Troy.
Right. Yeah.
It's the best that's a meat axe. The VZV is a meat axe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean,
you like it, Mr. Troy? You like the EZV?
Loves it.
5 years.
I took the EZV. I took it to the range. I set 20, you know, shooting a bow that I'm not used to shooting, doing things with, you know, all this other crap that I'm not used to doing. And it gave me a chance just to let some of my instinctiveness be there. Mm-hmm. I went and shot 5 targets at unknown distances, and I shot a video of that. First time ever doing it after I set 20, and it was 5 kills on all of those animals. That EZV. So
that is a step I'm yet to make, and I'm struggling with that step.
I took his bow. It's not even set up for me, and I was shooting arrows at 40 yards in the kill zone. I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." You know,
for what y'all do out west, that thing's magic. Because
I agree.
It's just you don't have to worry about the variability. If they move, your brain's just going to make the adjustment. And you're going to shoot. I mean, I've been telling tons of people that the guy who makes that's from Montana. He's an elk hunter.
Sweet,
Aaron.
So
and
one of the things I like to do, Joe, if you don't mind, is like quick summary of the 12 factors. And I don't know if we got time for that. You know, I know that
we can. We're getting ready to close out here, but I want everybody to hear that. I'm going to show it. And actually, you know, we can say what the 12 are, but I'd really, you know, if you had to say, I don't know if you can do that, man, but, you know, I was going to say, because you said you wanted people to go 2 more, that a lot of people have certain things going on, but you want them to go 2 more. I want you to explain that. So I'm going to put those up so that we can.
I'll talk to them real quick. And then we can go. Yep. All right. So step 1 is structural integrity. Nothing can fail at impact. Okay. It can't break, it can't bend, and the edge can't roll or dull. That's something that in structural integrity that's not discussed enough is you cannot have a broadhead that's dull and shredded shooting through an animal. It needs to retain its structural integrity. So no bends, no breaks, et cetera, et cetera. The second thing, we've talked a lot about this, and it scared the hell out of about half the crowd that's listening to this, the amount of effort it takes to get perfect arrow flight.
Right.
It is the enabler to penetration. A sideways flying arrow, wherever the tail of the arrow is going, it's going in one direction and the point's going another. If they are not in line at impact, the tail will go a different direction. So it's just going to kill your penetration. In the study for the center was the one thing that every percentage gained in FOC penetration increased a certain percentage. So we have ultra FOC, what I call a unicorn arrow, which is over 30%. That's really hard to build. EFOC is 19 to 30, and then below 19% is normal. FOC, is just is just normal for the center. Pretty easy to get there. Mechanical advantage is the angle of the incidence and number of blades. The less blades, the more advantage. So 4 blades are 50%, more drag. They have less mechanical advantage. It also has to do with the angle of the blades coming in, like very, very abrupt opening mechanical broadheads have 45-degree angles. They're literally slamming directly into the side of the animal vertically, and they have very poor mechanical advantage to penetrate. In fact, there's nothing out there that you swing at a rock or try to chop wood and stuff that looks like that. It's kind of crazy. The shaft diameter. So this is a very simple one. The shaft can't be bigger around the back of the broadhead.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward. You would prefer it to be smaller.
And which is totally weird, because I always felt like, holy Toledo, man, my shaft doesn't match up. It's kind of like, it's like I was wearing the wrong color shirt with my britches. You know what I mean?
Right. The micros are, when we figure out how to get the outsert systems to work on micros and be more durable, they're going to be really good for this deal here. You put the big tough head I shoot on a micro and it looks like a clown arrow. I mean, so the next thing is the arrow mass. So the more mass, the more momentum. It's that simple.
Makes sense.
And arrows tip shoot penetration is directly proportional to the momentum. Kinetic energy is not a scalar nor directional force. It is a force in all directions. But the arrow mass helps retain momentum, and the momentum helps drive the arrow forward. A train versus a tennis ball, right? It's like that. Blade edge finish. So there's actually a 26% advantage here for stropped, sharpened, razor sharp, and the type of edge that actually, when you shave your arm, the hairs jump off. Not just cut them off, they jump off.
I have spots all over my legs without hair.
That's why
I don't want to hear that.
That's why I use mostly newspapers like this, because you'll shave yourself bald. Yeah. And it's a bad shaving job, so you look like you got the mange.
That's what I look like right now.
Hey, I don't hair anyway, so I'm in bad shape.
Shaft profile is probably the most difficult thing to get. So there's only a couple of people making tapered arrows.
Yeah.
So if there's for instance, my arrow that I'm hunting nilgai with is an 11 factor arrow because I'm shooting a parallel shaft.
All my arrows are 11.
If there's an arrow, if there's one to give up, that's one to give up.
Right. Agree.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So broadhead silhouette. So that's actually, are there any bumps, bruises, angles, weird, welds? How smooth is the actual broadhead itself? Is it going to hang on anything? That also has to go with the next one, which is the type of bevel. So the single bevel broadhead, which we didn't get to discuss, I'll have to come back and talk about that, actually has a torquing motion when it goes through tissues. The harder this stuff it hits, the more it torques. And it tends to split bone. It also tends to rotate the soft tissue and make a bigger wound in lungs and stuff than the actual.
It's a drilling effect.
Right. Every broadhead profile on the planet stops rotating at impact except for single bevel. I don't care how much spin you put on them with the helical, any other platform hits and stops rotating, which is also killing your penetration because that's energy going sideways. It's stopped going sideways. The tip design, Tonto tip has a kind of a notched, faceted front. And
what is a Tonto tip?
Like this right here. That's a Tonto.
Let me show. Tonto tip is when your angle at the tip changes, Joe, like this. So you see how the angle is coming in a way, and then it just kind of tapers inwards.
I see that, yes.
So it gives the blade structural integrity. If it's too pointy at the moment of impact, the probabilities of it bending are bigger. But by making it at a shallower angle like this, it gives it structural integrity to where you prevent that from happening. Am I correct, Mr. Troy? Is that how you explain it?
Correct.
Sir?
Yeah, it's like having a chisel. It's like having a chisel in front of your razor blades. So you got this hard working piece that's designed for impact, and then behind that's the razor sharp plate piece.
So does a chisel tipped broadhead work that way?
Well, it's actually sharpened.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a sharpened secondary edge that's much more. It's a little tiny spot that's more steep. It's more like if you think about a drill, the very tip of a drill bit or something that's like a chisel, it's designed for horrible impacts.
Right.
On soft tissue, it doesn't make a difference at all.
Yeah,
This is won't fold over when it hits something hard.
Okay.
It's a chisel tip right there.
So that's a Tonto tip. Okay.
And
then the greatest debated one is the 650 grain heavy bone threshold. This is the only one that moves around.
Okay.
So in the event you hit something hard, it moves to number 4. If you hit a heavy bone, if you hit a scapula or something like that, 650 grain heavy bone threshold moves up to number 4. It can't bend or break. It's got to fly perfect. You need some forward to center. And then you need 650 or more grains to the highest percentage chance it will break an impact side bone. So it does move around.
Awesome.
Would you
if you
say
don't hit heavy bone, it stays at 12.
Did you say, Mr. Troy, that the single bevel could also move around depending on hitting heavy bone?
No, it'll stay about where it's at. I mean, it's going to be right about where it's at. Now, this 650 grain heavy bone threshold actually works pretty good with double bevel heads that are machined as well that are high structural integrity and tube laying.
Yeah,
they're optimized. They're optimized with a single bevel.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened to me. That on that hog I sent you the video of that I shot. Big hog, 710 grain broadhead, and hit him right on the spatula. And
that quartering inch shot on big hogs is devastating. It's one of my favorite shots.
Yeah,
that's the one that was at night and went in a circle and came right back and just fell over and his feet went straight up in the air.
That's the one. That's the one. The first one I sent you, right? But then this other one was the one that I shot that the arrow didn't fully go in. It probably penetrated this much, and I was mind blowing because it was a 710 grain, but it wasn't a single bevel broadhead.
Right. That's where you start to have this equation. So the more parts of the equation you pull back, you start to see weird stuff. Now, are we gonna have 100% bone breaks with a perfectly 11 or 12 factor arrow? You will not.
Right.
Because the animals are moving. We will never beat that.
Yeah.
Well,
them moving is a problem.
And there's even other variables on bone density and different things that you're dealing with on different animals.
Right, but I can promise you, if you go to 6 factors, your chances are not as great. It's just a giant equation. Like you broke the offside humerus on an elk, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's going to happen occasionally.
Yeah.
But we're trying to reduce the variables and maximize our potential.
Yeah, I did
and
that.
Once again, I've said this, we've said it 15 times on the soft tissue hit in the thoracic cavity, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay. But unless your broadhead fails or it bends or structural integrity,
Troy,
is compromised.
I think this has been an incredibly productive, incisive. This has just been fantastic. I think this is an incredible.
Well, thank you.
amount of information for our listeners, for those people out there that are wondering what they need to be able to not only to hunt elk, man, like you said, this helps them with whatever their current journey is in their home state right now with the animals that they hunt as well. But I can tell you this, man, you develop a system that is going to punch through a 700-pound animal, then you have zero worries with that whitetail, man.
That's exactly right. It works. It scales down better than it scales up, right?
Yeah.
Light arrows don't scale up as fast as Ed said. When he started shooting 900 grains with a longbow and he got used to it, he just shot it all the time.
Absolutely.
Bears, sheep, whitetail deer, it didn't matter. I'm used to this, right?
Yep. It's going to fly, man. Thank you so much, bud.
And your recommendation,
thank you very much.
Your recommendation on the lighted nock is necessary, because when you blow through a whitetail like that, you need something shining so you could go find it. Because it goes a long way. Like you said, when you scale up or scale down, it's definitely relative.
One last comment for the elk guys, and then we got to go. Sure. I got to go fishing tomorrow. You guys got to work or whatever. But I do not recommend lighted nocks for long range.
Gotcha.
They're not as accurate. They're not. If you're going to shoot lighted nocks and you're going to shoot over 50, or over 40, you need to practice with that exact setup. Broadhead, lighted nocks, everything. They are not the same nock as your stock nocks.
Okay.
And stupid little things like that can make that weird 2-inch weird one that just takes off a little bit. And then it goes from here to here and goes from here to here.
When you go through the process and when you a bear shaft nock tune each one of your arrows with your lighted nocks, shooting bullet holes through papers, should you still worry about it at long distance?
When I'm going no guy hunting, I'm not shooting lighted nocks. I'm shooting stock nocks. That's serious stuff there. Screwing around with pigs around a deer feeder, who cares? They're right there.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't compromise. I wouldn't compromise an elk hunt for a lighted nock.
You say long distance.
You tested it. Listen, if you bear shaft nock tune with lighted nocks and then shoot them with fletchings, with broadheads to 70 yards, and they do it fine.
Right.
I am not recommending you just go, I'm going to shoot lighted nocks on this hunt and just stick them in there and go elk hunting.
Right.
Gotcha. You're asking for just you've changed some stuff.
Yeah.
You've added 25 grains to the back of the damn arrow. It's not tested, and you think I'll be fine. And then arrow kind of veers off and you kind of half hit one in the liver.
You're adding weight.
Bow don't work and broadhead's no good. And
you're adding weight and you're adding it on the wrong side of the arrow as well.
Yeah, there's that. But I'm talking about the inconsistency in the lighted nocks themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
Great information. All right, I got to go. I got to go fishing tomorrow.
All right, man.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Troy, close us out, bud.
Troy, fantastic information, guys. Fellas, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, rate, and review us. You got to go to Apple Podcast or iTunes to review us. And you can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. And just a reminder, guys, this is the time of the year to get to our base camp and use the information. Well over 100 years worth of knowledge that have been put up into that base camp on calling, shot placement, you name it, it's in there. Go to ElkBros.com and get that base camp this year, and you will be so much more advanced when you hit the woods in September. And if any of our listeners also would like their questions answered on our show, just send your questions to info@ElkBros.com. That's info@ElkBros.com. And like we say down here in the Lone Star State, and even those weird people in Austin, husbands, kiss your wives, wives, kiss your husbands, hug your babies, keep your broadhead sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Peace, everybody. Peace. Here's the music from our brother, Tony Wintrip, closing the show. Good night.
Thank you.
I get my goods from the river and woods. I get my highs climbing a mountainside. I get my life on. I'm family strong. In the fall I'm gonna get my elk on. At daylight I'm sitting just right, about to let an arrow fly. I get my goods from the river and the woods. I get my goods cross rod, get my drift on. At the tail out, he's cranking on the tip. Boy, I'm about to rip some lips. Yeah. I get my goods from the river and the woods. I get my highs climbing a mountainside. I get my boots on. I'm UA strong, going way deep with my pack on. And base camp with the basin view, and mountain house meals gonna get me through. I get my goods from the river and the woods. I get my goods from the river and the woods. River and the woods, I get my highs under a starlit sky. I get my life on, American strong. I'm living off the land all year long.